country. I've listened to their empty promises while we all wait, and we are sick of waiting. So today, I am going to be the Taoiseach, and I am going to give you the apology that you deserve. Housing is a human right, a basic human need, and I, and many in power before me, have failed in our roles to ensure that every individual living in this country has access to a good quality, secure and affordable home. I'm sorry to the thousands of people on the social housing list in this country, to every adult and child in emergency accommodation, in hotels, hostels and shelters, to every adult and child in direct provision, to those staying with friends and family, living in others' back gardens and sleeping on couches, to those who have relocated miles from where they work, forced to spend hours a day commuting, to those paying extortionate rents, to those who can't afford to save for a mortgage, to those in negative equity, to the older people who have remortgaged to help someone else secure a home, to the young people who are stuck in their parents' homes or have made a decision to emigrate, to the traveller community whose nomadic ways of life have been criminalised, to those with a disability who cannot secure an appropriate home to meet their needs, to those in abusive relationships who can't live because they fear that they'll be out in the streets, and to those living on our nation's streets, and to those who have died on our streets. I stand before you all today to give you the apology you deserve. To Brendan, who feels like he is living on a trapdoor with a rope around his neck, at the mercy of landlords who ignore complaints about filthy carpets and a broken shower, cold water and cold air howling through cracked windows. Landlords who hike up the rent when they are challenged about the mould that has grown as fast as his children. Landlords who finally issue an eviction notice, leaving Brendan and his family 48 days to rearrange their lives. Brendan questions his decision to have come back from his life abroad, to bring his partner and his children to the city that he grew up in the country of 100,000 welcomes. To Alia, whose family received an eviction notice months before her leaving cert. Her studying time was replaced with hours on the phone, trying to find a room for 3 children and 2 adults. Alia spent every evening in the library making use of the Wi-Fi, but one night she missed her curfew to study for a science exam and was put in a hostel room with 8 strangers. She was scared and shaken and saw someone overdose. Alia blames herself for getting lost in her studies that evening, and she now talks to her sisters just once a week. To Kevin, who was living in a hub and planning to kill himself, no longer able to cope with the size of the room once a new cot had been set up. The intensity of living with a pregnant partner, the smell of the food from the canteen where they had to eat, the stress, the worry, wondering will this ever get better, kept alive by the love he has for his baby daughter in her tiny little shoes, not wanting to leave her there and never wanting her to know that she was born in a hub. To Mary, who only wants a safe haven, a place to hang the framed picture of her boy on his first day of school, with his blue glasses and his snowy white hair. She's been on the housing list for her son's whole life. She checks once a week online, praying that she has moved up on the list. But her number has only moved once in 3 years. Mary was given the options: to go homeless, to go into emergency accommodation, or take an apartment with a kicked-in door and a gang selling drugs outside. Lonely and isolated, Mary feels like she has been dumped in hell and forgotten. To David, who is no longer young and who misses his holy stick which is in his parents' house here in Ireland while he lives abroad. He wants to come back but can't afford to live on his own and is depressed at the prospect of a house share at his age. Feeling trapped outside the high wall that is being built around affordable housing and missing family conversations, pokeabouts and the smell of cooked grass. To Lizzie, who cherishes the winter conversations at the open fire, with people coming from all parts of the Holton site for cups of tea and chats by our father's lamp. Lizzie loves traveller culture, but it's not part of culture to live without basic human needs. No one should have to take the ice off the inside of caravan windows before sending children to school. Living with bad lungs and a lower life expectancy, all Lizzie wants is the best facilities for her community and not to see them forced into mainstream houses. A housing policy that facilitates all walks of life. But now Lizzie is being asked to move and leave behind years of memories because the people in the nearby apartments don't like the view. To Paddy, who remembers the New Year's Eve party that he and his wife were at, when someone explained the term negative equity. And now, in mortgage arrears, every year on his children's birthday, Paddy counts another year in debt, and he wishes that debt a happy birthday. He is haunted by the memory of the day when he and his wife realised they can't afford to have another child. And he has gotten used to see his wife cry for that child. Paddy finally told his wife about his idea to kill himself and heard she had a similar idea. He often finds himself returning to his childhood memories so he can recall what a secure home feels like. To Claire, who has spent so much time scanning ads online for apartments that claim to be accessible, but only allow a wheelchair user in the door and don't consider the need to move around inside, or to have a shower, or have room for a couch for guests, or have a nearby bus stop to get to work. Claire was excited to finally secure an apartment in the city that was actually accessible. But now, all she feels is stress, as she pays her rent but can't move in, because there is no personal assistance supports available to her. Claire can't see any light at the end of the tunnel. To Raphael, who is constantly looking for a place to live and who has slept in overcrowded houses and on friends' couches and floors. His doctor has told him to find a better place to live for the sake of his health, but where can he go? He wonders how you are supposed to get references if you've been in direct provision most of your life. He is tired of potential landlords being more interested in the fact that he is black, rather than the fact that he is a healthcare worker, a student and a youth mentor. He is tired of always moving and just wants somewhere to belong, wishing that there was a sense of humanity in the housing system. Raphael just wants to be free. To the children who have spent year after year in emergency accommodation, their childhood memories robbed of the many milestones and memories that they should have had. The children absorbing their parents' anxieties. The children commuting to school like worn-out adults. The children who don't have a table to eat their breakfast at or do their homework on. And to Paula, who is talking to all of you now, she spent 15 years on a council list waiting to be housed. 13 of those years were spent in rundown, overpriced accommodation, until a small electrical fire caused by a storage heater left her and her children homeless. I want to acknowledge her pain and suffering. There is a view out there that many people in this country are failing, and the situations that they find themselves in are entirely the result of their own decisions. But that is not true. I want to make something very clear to all of you and let it be noted for public record. It is not your fault. Consecutive governments have failed you. The truth is that the current housing crisis is the result of so many policy decisions at the highest level. We failed to bring in rent regulations and proper tenants' rights. We listened to the intensive lobbying of private developers and vulture funds. We prioritised the needs of landlords, developers and builders. We outsourced their responsibilities to profit-making companies, and we took away the independence of local authorities, and we simply didn't build enough houses. We saw housing as a commodity, and we lost sight of every person's basic need for a safe and secure home. And for that, I just want to say I am sorry. I am so sorry.
Thanks so much for that. That was great. I hope you guys enjoyed watching that. We're now going to go on to a PowerPoint for the summary of the year for 2021 and 2022. And it'll just be like a short presentation followed by like 10 minutes of question and answers. So if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the YouTube comments and we'll pass them on to the speaker, and anyone in the Zoom can answer them for you. So I think I'll pass it on to Enda now to share screen and read out the PowerPoint.
Hello. 1 second. How do I share screen again? This is something I should remind myself how to do. Screen, yes, right in front of me. So this is by now an annual tradition of the AGM, our second AGM. And first of all, can everyone hear me? Yeah, cool. So we're going to run through all the progress we've made, all the beautiful work that's been done in growing the union over the last 12 and a bit months, actually almost 15 months, I think. So the union started in 2019 with, I think, about 30 members, really small organization, few people in what we call general membership, and one group launch. The first group launch was Mountjoy, Dorset Street. From there, we set up new branches all around Dublin City, and we had a branch start in Belfast, one in Cork, one in Limerick. And by the end of 2020, we had about 600 members, which was fantastic. And then in the following year, we moved on to from 653 the end of 2020 to 1,491 by the end of December 2021. And that's 3 months ago. We've continued to grow even beyond that, but that's phenomenal growth. And we're really proud of that, because obviously growth is integral to what we do. We need to keep growing, keep the momentum going. There's always people out there who have new problems with their landlords, new complaints about maintenance not being done. There are campaigns that need our support, like refugee solidarity stuff, or like what Belfast is doing with the Grenfell and Kingspan boycott. There's loads of work to do, so we need to keep growing and getting new people involved and finding new ways of getting existing members involved. We're really happy with almost 1,500 members. To look at how that membership's split up, next few slides are going to look at local groups and branches. So the first slide here, we see Belfast. So originally Belfast was one group, it was just CATU Belfast. And then last year they split into 4 local groups to make it easier for people on the ground to organise. Because obviously Belfast is a pretty big city. So we've got North Belfast, South Belfast, East Belfast, and West Belfast. And this is the approach we want to kind of take with all our groups that grow beyond about 80 members. Once you get to a certain size, we want to split up and make it hyper local. So CATU is always your local organisation, and it's really accessible. So we're really happy with how that's working out in Belfast, even though there were lots of challenges involved. Obviously, this is organising through COVID with lockdowns. Up in Belfast, most of our organising staff and most of the National Committee are down in Dublin. So the Belfast members had to figure things out. They obviously got some support from our organisers who did a great job, but they had to do a lot of work themselves. We're really proud of them. And obviously the whole dynamic and the context in Belfast is different. Different city, different laws around housing, different challenges to face, different housing crisis. So we're really excited. All the work they've done that's driven the growth that you can see here in the graph, where North Belfast is more or less doubled, South Belfast has exploded, as is East Belfast, West Belfast doing fantastic in terms of growth numbers, and that's off the back of loads of door knocking, stalls, membership defence work, refugee solidarity work, work around the Kingspan boycott. So Kingspan are the sponsors of, I think, Ulster Rugby. Don't know anything about sports, but they're also responsible for the Grenfell fire in London. So CATU Belfast are working with other people in Belfast to say, no, this is not what we stand for. This does not represent us. And it's really great to see them get involved in local campaigns like that. But also Belfast members have contributed nationally to CATU, getting involved in research working groups or the campaigns group and things like that, or in the national committee, helping us figure out how to run the union. Our hope over the next year is to get Belfast even more involved in the union. So some of the motions you've been voting on for the AGM deal with making CATU more of an all-Ireland union and getting us a Ulster organiser. So hopefully when this slideshow is repeated in 2023, we won't just be talking about North Belfast and South Belfast, etc., but we're talking about Derry and Newry and Omagh and Limavady and Larne and everywhere. Loads of big towns, loads of communities up there in Ulster where people are struggling, and CATU would love to be organising and taking on the good fight. So moving on to Dublin, we're going to look at the North City branches first. So we've got Cabra. FMC is the Fairview Marino Clontarf, that's my branch. Mountjoy Dorset is our oldest branch. Phibsneven is I think our biggest Dublin branch at the moment. And Stoneybatter is one of our newest branches. They only launched in the last few months. So obviously, again, we're seeing really steady growth across almost all of them, especially in Phibsneven. And Phibsneven, Stoneybatter, and Mountjoy are where you see a lot of the big high-profile anti-eviction action, membership defence action. You're looking at things like the Prussia Street squat was evicted, the Joseph's Parade eviction, where a CATU member walked past someone having bailiffs throwing their furniture out in the street, and we managed to organise a crowd within half an hour and stop that eviction. And that kind of like high profile, getting down the trenches, stopping evictions in the track is what we really want to be doing. It's also really great. Every time we get a success story like that, membership explodes because people want to be part of that, and we want to continue doing that kind of work. So a lot of that's coming out of the North Inner City, because unfortunately there are a lot of really crappy landlords in the North Inner City, and well, North Dublin in general. But that's not to say things aren't going great on the south side and in South County Dublin and in Maynooth, where again we're seeing really fantastic growth. Here we have our newest officially launched branch, Lucan Palmerstown. And when I say officially launched, I mean they've elected a committee, they started social media, and they're expected to continue to sustain themselves as a group and grow. We also have dozens, well, loads, I don't know the exact number. We have plenty of pre-launch groups that are more informal, in places like East Wall and Drogheda and kind of all over the country, really, Sligo, Leitrim and Tala, which are at varying levels of organisation. So hopefully next year, a lot more groups will be added onto this list. A lot more graphs will be showing up on how people are organising and growing. So here, yeah, we've got Crumlin and Drimnagh are growing strongly. They kind of adjusted their boundaries to better reflect kind of where people are and where people would best suited to work together. So that accounts for some of their growth, but strong growth otherwise. Dunleary is another one of our newest branches. They launched, I think, in 2021 itself. They've more than doubled in size. Inchicore Kilmainham launched, I think, in 2020. They're one of our older branches and they're steadily growing. Liberty Rialto, also been around for a while and exploding. They now have 2 members on the national committee because they have over 80 members. So they're a branch rather than a group. And Rathmines Ranelagh are not far behind them. I'm really happy to see Maynooth showing strong growth. Because obviously that's a college town, there's a fair amount of turnover of people going through Maynooth. So it's hard to keep a presence in Maynooth. So really proud of how long they've been going and all the good work they're doing. Looking down at Cork, we see another huge success story. So Cork is obviously a big city, but it's nowhere near the scale of Dublin and Belfast. And that poses a challenge because it just means there's a smaller pool of people who are interested in organising and getting involved. And it's historically been hard to keep groups like this active in Cork. So going back years, there have been loads of housing action groups in Dublin. You look at Dublin Central Housing Action, Take Back Cities campaign. There's the Dublin Bay North's homeless. I can't remember the exact acronym, but there's a group there for ages doing really great anti-eviction work. And in Belfast, the same, there was a Belfast Housing Action before CATU. But outside of those 2 big cities, it's always been hard to keep things going long term. Groups are set up, but they have a limited number of members and a limited amount of growth, and eventually to be burnout. And it's great to see that has not happened in Cork. So they've gone from 50 odd members at the end of 2020 to over 150 members December 2021, which is phenomenal growth. And they've been doing such incredible work. They had a dereliction walking tour where they looked at all the empty properties left to rot around Cork City and all the potential for fighting homeless, just tax the owners or compulsory purchase them. Doing loads of great membership defence work, fighting evictions as they're happening or before they happen. Loads of door knocking and stalls and reaching out to people and growing the organisation and growing the depth of organisation. And we'd love to see Cork even grow further and split into Cork City, maybe a West Cork or a Macroom branch or a Mallow branch and things, or a group, things like that, because there's clearly huge potential down there. Similar story in Galway. It's even tougher again in Galway to keep a group going because it's smaller again in Cork. And obviously there's a huge amount of stuff happening in around Dublin and Maynooth and places like that. Whereas the Galway people kind of have to stand their own 2 feet and they don't even have their own staff organizer yet. Although hopefully we'll get the numbers up to the point where we can make that happen. So we're really proud that they've continued to grow, and they've they moved from a little over 40 members at the end of 2020 up to almost 80 members at the end of 21, and they're doing really good work there. Great national committee contributions from the national rep Michael. Great to see the branch just continue to grow and sustain itself. Lots of people in Galway involved in stuff like the research working group and different working groups and caucuses, stuff that happens outside of Galway on a kind of all Ireland basis. And that's the kind of depth of organising we'd like to encourage so that people in smaller towns or smaller cities can contribute to the union in the same way that people living in Dublin can, where there's obviously more opportunities and more members. So we've been looking until now at growth from 2020 up until the end of 21. This slide here shows just the first 3 months of 2022, which, as far as I know, is the current year. So what we see here is on the left-hand side, general membership is, and then on the right-hand side, we have the general membership is 49% of new members in the last 3 months, and 51% of the people who joined in the last 3 months have joined these various branches: South Belfast, Mountjoy, Dorset, etc., down to Cork. When we say general membership, we mean people who are members of CATU, but they don't live in an area where there's an established group or branch. So, for instance, if you join in Marino, you automatically become a member of the Fairview Marino Clontarf branch. If you join in anywhere in Cork County or Galway County, you're automatically in the Cork local branch or the Galway local group. If you join in Cabra, you're in the Cabra local group. But if you join somewhere where there isn't a density of members yet, or just a very low number of members, somewhere like Donegal, you're just in general membership. Or even that could even be in the Dublin suburbs where we don't have branches yet. So like in Finglas and Ballymun, even though there's lots of organising there, and there's thirst for a new Catholic group, there isn't a group yet. So your general membership. So that portion of the membership is growing really strongly. And that's really exciting because it shows potential. I'm going to move on to the next slide to look at that even more detail. So in 2020, 28.6% of overall membership at the end of the year were general, and that's gone up to 32, almost a third of members now are outside of an existing group, which means there's loads of potential outside the areas we've already organised to build more organisation. So CATU is really succeeding in not being just a Dublin-centric or even a Belfast-Dublin-centric organisation. It's working towards being an all-Ireland union. That's really something we want to work on this year, is getting these people more involved, finding new ways for them to work together and collaborate and build branches and groups where there's appetite for it. Like places like Limerick City, we have 20 odd members. They just need to launch, elect a committee, and they're going to have a group. Similar story down in Waterford, whereas Leitrim and Sligo, it's a little bit different, where we have a lot of members in general membership there. I'm going to show you actually on our map here. Each pin here shows where there's one member of CATU who's not in a local group. Ignore County Galway and Cork, because anyone there is in their local group. So it's not that we have no one in Cork or no one in Galway. So you can see there's loads of people all over Ireland want to get involved in CATU, and all of these people already can get involved in working groups and caucuses and things like that. But we're hoping to get more of them involved in local organising. So as I said, that's simple in places like Limerick, we're all clustered together, and Waterford and places like that. In Sligo and Leitrim is an example of where people are spread out more. So we're going to have to think about new dynamics and new ways of approaching organising to account for the fact that people don't necessarily live 2 streets over from each other. They might be 20 miles apart. But we want to make CATU that kind of organisation where we can work with people no matter where they are in the island. And we're really excited about the potential there. This is the same map, but just zoomed in on Dublin. Because obviously there's so many people around Dublin that the all island map, there's all bunch up, you can't see them. So all of these blue dots again represent individual members in and around Dublin City who are just slightly outside the boundaries of where we've already established branches. So you see there's no blue dot around Lucan, because we have now a Lucan Palmerstown branch just in the last few weeks. There are plenty of dots around the inner city, because they could fall just between where we've got Mountjoy, Dorset and Liberties Rialto groups. So there's potential there for lots of organising around Rings End, and on the north side up around Finglas and Raheny and places like that, or down in Tala. We've got lots of members, but we don't yet have committees elected. We don't yet have like social media platforms going public, saying we are, CATU Tala and we're here to stay. We're hoping to see that in the next 12 months or however long it takes, because as I said, there's plenty of potential. How am I doing for time? So this slide just goes kind of a similar overview. It shows us where members are. So we've got 32 counties represented by the 32 flags, and there's only 3 of them have a little soon bubble over them. And that's because we have no members in Armagh, Fermanagh, or Tyrone. And so we have 29 counties with CATU members. And some of those counties might only have a handful. Some of those counties, like County Dublin, have hundreds and hundreds of members. But our plan is, as I said, we have 2 motions in the AGM that relate to increasing this coverage. We want to make it an more all-Ireland union, and we want to elect or appoint a Ulster organizer. The 3 counties we don't yet have any members. They're all in Ulster. So hopefully we can, as I said earlier, increase our depth of organising up there and get branches going, or get people signed up for general membership even in Armagh, in Fermanagh, and in Tyrone. Because we want to keep growing. We want to see what we can achieve. We achieved so much when it was only the 30 odd people that started in 2019. We achieved even more in 2020 when it was a few hundred people. With over 1,000 members in 2021. I mean, we stopped so many evictions. We educated so many people about what their rights are as tenants. We empowered people to stand up for themselves. We collaborated with so many different campaigns and different groups. I think we all deserve to give each other a good pat in the back, because we're growing strength from strength. At the start of this presentation, I mentioned how we had almost 1,500 members at the end of 2021. We're now 3 months into 2022, and we are at 1,600 members, which is twice where we were at last year's AGM, which I think was also in April. I can't remember exactly. So I'd love to see membership double again in the next 12 months. I think that's definitely possible. Obviously, it gets harder and harder to double the bigger you get. But I mean, we have so many groups going, so many pre-launch groups, so much potential, so much achieved. We've a real good track record of what we've done. And we have so much energy for keeping the union relevant and adapting it to the new challenges it's facing. So let's get it up over 2,000, up over 3,000, just keep growing in the next year. And that's about all I have to tell you about membership. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to hang on the line. And I think Nora can let me know what questions come up. Let's stop sharing. Oh, and just seeing in the chat as well, that Limerick and Waterford will launch in 2 weeks. I think that's Nora, our Munster organizer. So that's really great to see, because they've been working really hard for so long. Like Waterford, I know, has been a very long road with a very small, cool group of organisers working really hard. And it's great to see that that's paid off. They got new people on board, and they're reaching a stage now where they have like a sustainable group that can actually launch. A similar story in Limerick, and it just shows how much can be achieved when you have a local organizer in the area to give people the support and the push to get organizing. So well done, Nora, our Munster organizer, for getting those 2 groups up on the precipice of launching. Apparently we have no questions yet, so I'm just going to sit here for a few minutes.
No questions yet, and we have about like 20 minutes till the next section, so maybe just to give people time to, if they have any questions that they want to ask about the last year, what we could maybe do is just do a quick round of introductions. I realize I didn't do that at the start, which I probably should have done. Yeah. So my name's Louise. I'm the national rep for Inchicore Kilmainham, and I am on the finance team for the past year, and I got re-elected for the next year, so looking forward to doing more procurement fulfillment for the next year. Orla, do you want to go next?
I'm just a bit distracted by our youngest CATU member there. Hi. My name is Orla. I'm outgoing for Liberties Rialto, and I've been on the finance team for the last 2 years, and have just moved to Inchicore Kilmainham. So excited to get organising now.
Do you want to elect the next person to speak?
Oh yeah, next is Enda, to the right of me. So go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Enda. I'm the person who has been speaking for the last 20 minutes or so. I should have introduced myself more when I took the reins there, but yeah, I'm the national rep for Fairview Marino Clontarf. I was on last year's committee and I've been re-elected, so I'm going to continue on in the kind of membership admin role. And yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Tom.
Hey everybody, yeah, my name's Tom. I'm the national committee rep for the Rathmines Ranelagh branch in Dublin, and I've just been recently elected, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that role. And I'm on the finance committee as well, so I'll be learning about that over the coming months. Yeah, maybe Haroon, can you go next?
Sure, if the microphone works. Yep. Hi, I'm Harun. I'm an incoming national rep for Liberties Rialto, one of the two, as Enda mentioned. We now have two. Wait, I didn't nominate the next one. I don't see people. Wait. Seamus.
How are you all? My name's Seamus Farrell. This is Roisin. This is one of the CATU babies, a recent CATU babies. I'm stuck with her today, so she's participating. I'm in Fisbert Nevin, and we were able to elect 2 people this year. So myself and Stephen were elected for the coming year ahead. I don't know what my role is yet, but I put down admin and membership. But we'll see. I'm flexible. Go on, Stephen. Fisborough, massive.
Yeah, I'm the second Fisher Class 11 rep. I'll be a returning officer from last year. I sat on membership and admin last year. My roles kind of changed as staff came on and stuff like that. But I guess I was mainly responsible for like staff coordination and the grievance process. I'll pass you on to Nisha.
Hello, I'm Nisha. I'm admin staff since August of last year, and you'll hear more about my work in a little while. I'll give you a little presentation on what I'm up to. I'll pass on to Aaron.
Hey, my name's Aaron. I am one of the staff national organisers, which is a very broad role, but I am based in Dublin 8 in Inchicore and Kilmainham. I'm going to pass it over to Ali.
Sorry, did you say Ali?
Yeah, I did.
I'll go next anyways, even if you didn't. Hi everyone, I'm Ali. I'm the new incoming national rep for Mountjoy Dorset, and I'll be reading the motions later today. I don't have a role yet, but you might see me on the comms committee or the admin committee next year. And I'll pass it on to Dylan.
Maybe Dylan can't speak right now. So Danielle, you said you could speak just with camera off.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Danielle. I'm a little bit ill. Apologies. I am the CATU national rep for Dún Laoghaire, and I'm also on the comms team, outgoing. So looking forward to working with whoever's incoming there. Pass over to Emma.
Hi, I go by Ethan. I'm new to the Dublin 15 Blanchardstown branch, and we've been working with Aaron to set it up. And I'm the newly elected national rep for the LGBTQ plus caucus. And I'm not sure what my role is yet, but I've put down for communications, and I'm looking forward to the following year. Thank you. I don't know who to pass it over to.
I think Nora hasn't gone yet.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm the relatively new Munster organizer, so I've been in the role for 4 months now, and I'll be making an update later about what I've been doing and what my role entails. So yeah, I'm just introducing myself now. Nice to meet everyone who's watching. And I'll pass it on to Tomas, who hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, hi, my name's Tomas. I'm one of two of the incoming Cork national representatives. Haven't been given a position yet, so I'm not sure who else to pass it on to next.
I think Jordy, if you're able to speak. Okay, they might not be able to speak right now. I saw that one chat came in the one question came in the chat, which I'm not sure if someone knows the answer to, but I'll ask it anyway in case someone can say it, which is Gavin Bush was asking, what is the ratio of membership in private, public to non-profit housing? And I don't think we have that kind of data on our membership, but if anyone wants to speak on it, Aaron, you have your hand up.
We don't have that data now, but part of the surveys that are going out for the AGM are to collect that data. And I think the research team might talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, we don't have it to hand. It's not something we collect on members, but it's something that I'd like to get a feel for within the union for the demographics that we have. And I definitely have been making a bit of a concerted push as an organizer to bring more public approved housing body, housing executive, tenants into the union, because their collective issues all faced under the same landlord, even though the landlord is public or non-profit or charity based. And I think we need to diversify beyond having a mostly private renter base. And yes, there is a motion about this as well. It comes under one of the campaigns, which calls for kind of more recruitment amongst public housing tenants.
Okay, if there isn't any more questions, I think we might move on to the next item in our agenda, which is our finance report from Orla on the finance team. So just going through sort of our accounts for the past year. Oh, sorry, Seamus, you have your hand up. Do you want to say something?
It looks like Jordy can speak now, and I think maybe Dylan has come back off the call.
All right, yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jordy?
Sure. Hi, my name's Jordy. I'm representing Stony Batter and Grange Gorman on the National Committee this year. Yeah.
Cool. And Dylan, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly as well?
Yeah, Dylan from the Crumlin Drimnagh branch.
Cool, good stuff. So yeah, I guess we'll move on to the finance report. So yeah, just going through our accounts for the last year. So Orla, if you want to share your screen and go through it.
I do. Bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous, but we're going to be okay. Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So these are our accounts for year ended 31st of December 2021. I'm going to fly through these, and what we're going to do is actually email these out to everybody. And if you have any specific questions after that, you can reach me on the finance email, and I'll be very happy to go through them. I don't want to take up too much of your time with this because I'm aware it's not the most exciting part of today. So this is all of our kind of background information, who the directors are. At the minute, we've got Stephen, Rua, and Louise as our secretary. And they will potentially be changing with the new committee. This is a kind of shortened overview of where we're at financially for the year. So you can see that our dues took a huge jump, which is lovely to see. So our membership has increased massively, but also some of that will be people upping their dues as well, which is always nice. Our funding comes from Rosa Luxemburg. And we have also had some donations this year, which is also funding from CIF. Staff costs have taken a big jump. That's because we went from 2 part-time organisers in the year end of 2020 up to 1 full-time and 4 part-time staff in 2021, which is amazing. That's very exciting, and hopefully that growth will continue as our membership continues to grow. And there's a further breakdown of the rest of these numbers further below, so I'm going to take you down there. So our balance sheet is looking great. The jump in fixed assets is mostly staff equipment, so that would be like laptops, phones for staff. Our current assets is our bank account at the year end. Prepayments is just an accounting figure, which basically means amounts that we've paid in the current year that relate to the next year. And again, there's further breakdowns down here. This is all just regulatory wording. It's not very exciting. So this is just a further breakdown of our kind of ins and outs for the year. So again, members' dues are up. Our donations and ROSA funding, wage and salaries, just what's that made up of? So that's the actual salaries, and then also the employer's PRSI that we pay. So here we go. So rent, that is our A4 studio that we use. Insurance is our public liability insurance. Printing, postage and stationery, that will generally increase with membership growth. That's mostly our leaflets and signage. So that's the bulk of our specific expenses. Phone and internet is staff costs again. So that's staff phones. Computer costs is things like our Zoom account subscriptions, it's our membership database and any kind of software subscriptions that we have within the union, which again has jumped because we've had to add additional accounts with our growth in membership. Obviously 2020 we didn't have any travel because of COVID, but we had a bit this year, so that's the jump there. So that will be our national organisers moving across the country to different branches. Bank charges and branch actions. So branch actions consists of any action taken by a branch that they've submitted an expense request for. So there's been, I'm sure you've all seen in your local branches and across the country, there's been incredible actions done by local groups, and we are more than happy to fund those. And I said it last year and I'll say it again. If you have an idea, no matter how big or how small, contact finance and see how we can make it happen. And money shouldn't be a worry when you're planning these actions. So just let us know what you want to do and we will more than happily facilitate that. And corporation tax charge is just the tax we pay on the money that we have taken in. So that's it. So if anyone has any questions, sorry, I see a question coming here. Can I ask what CIF is mentioned as a source of donations by Orla? Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, actually, Louise, you're probably a bit better positioned to speak about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, so CFI is the Community Foundation.
Sorry, CFI.
That's grand. Is the Community Foundation of Ireland. Basically, they gave us a donation last year, and that was to further education in the union. So that went to our education officer's salary, Ashlyn, who will be doing a staff report in a minute. But yeah, basically they gave us some money to further education, and we gave it to Ashlyn to do all the lovely trainings that she's been doing over the past year. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you have any more questions or clarifications on that, and I'd be happy to answer.
I don't see any more questions, but again, those accounts are going out to the full membership in the coming week. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach us on the finance email anytime, or even if you want to call to go through things, just let me know. I'll keep an eye on questions, but that's me for now, I think.
I'll put the finance officer email in the chat in case anyone wants to email us any questions, and we'd be happy to get back to you. But yeah, thanks a mil. For now, I think we're gonna move on to the staff reports. So I'm not sure who's going first, but if you want to start sharing your screen and just chatting about the work over the past year. Does anyone know who's going first out of the staff?
I'm going first.
You're going first. Right.
I want to give just an update on from the national's perspective how we've hired over the past year, and kind of like our thinking along the way. So I guess when we started off around this time last year, we had a part-time national organizer and an education officer. And as you've seen there, by our massively increased membership, the workload increased along with that. And basically we brought on then a second national organizer part-time to help with the workload of that. And Andy and Aaron had a really difficult job. Not only is it difficult for organisers to organise on an island-wide basis, but they had to deal with coming in and out of COVID lockdowns constantly as well. And despite that, they did a really good job, and it's there's some brilliant highlights along the way, which the staff themselves will highlight. Then I guess along with that increased workload came increased workload for national, particularly in the area of administration, which I had been sitting on that team, and it was just becoming way too much for volunteers to look after. So that's when we brought in Nisha, who did a great job not only organising the chaos that I had left behind, but they have also been great in providing suggestions and great ideas on how we can improve all the time. And it's been really great having them. We then had a gap where there was basically no education and training officer for a while, and I think that was really reflected in our membership and how they were feeling in terms of their confidence in their skills and in doing things like door knocking and then anti-evictions and stuff like that. And so we brought in Ashlyn to work on that, and I think everyone's really seeing the benefit of that. Our trainings have increased massively, and we're getting great feedback from them. So it's really great to see that work start to build up, and the benefit of that for the members. And yeah, the more education and training we can provide to our members, the better. And don't forget, if you have any ideas on how we can do better, to grant to Ashlyn about it, because I'm sure she'd be delighted to pick up on them. And then, so I talked about how it was difficult for national organise on an island-wide basis. So we came up with a plan for regional organisers then, and we wanted to start off in Munster because they had a high membership base there. But Cork had been the only really active branch at the time. And so we brought in Nora, and it not only have we had like great feedback from our national reps in Cork and how Nora's been getting on, but as Enda mentioned earlier, we're seeing momentum now in Limerick and in Waterford, and that's excellent. You know, that's what we want to see is more growth in areas outside of where we've been traditionally strong. And yeah, that's pretty much the main stuff. I'll let the staff themselves talk about their highlights. Just to say, our organizer Anya can't be here, but I guess I was in one of their branches, and I can give like a couple of highlights. So I guess one was the Dublin 7 No Evictions campaign, which went really well. I think it's done a lot for cross branch collaboration, and it's been really inspiring to kind of see branches kind of organize together, you know, door knock, help each other door knock in different areas, and skill share. And I think it's done a lot for the spirits within each branch to be able to do that with other branches. And it would be great to see more branches start to do that if they can, even if it requires like a bus trip or something like that for a day. It would be great to see more cross branch collaboration. And I guess another was in Dunleary, particularly the solidarity shown between the two unions in I think it was ESB workers. I could be wrong on that, but it was two unions, ourselves and them, helping out a member who is facing eviction. So again, it's great to see solidarity, and it would be great to see more kind of work from CATU with other unions and with other groups that have similar interests. So yeah, I guess I'll move on now to the staff themselves. I'll start with Nora, if that's all right.
Oh, I'm a bit surprised. I was expecting maybe to start with Aaron, his national organizer, but fine. Okay, I will start. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see everyone here today, and I'm still quite new to the role, so I only started in December. And so I will try to give a brief update of what I've been doing, but also explain a bit what my plans are for the future, so that any members who are watching now can get in touch and we can coordinate properly for what is to come. So I started in December, and after induction and basically getting used to how to interact with the national committee, with staff, and sort of trying to plan the year, I think the organizing activity in earnest started at the beginning of January, also because late December is a bit of a difficult time to get people organized together. So my focus has been twofold. Like Stephen mentioned and that before, at the beginning, only the Cork branch existed, but there were significant clusters of members across Munster. And so I am only part-time, and I usually try to juggle in my week actions that are meant to consolidate the Cork branch, and I have been doing this for the past months, and organizing activity to basically launch local groups in places where we have significant clusters of members. I would say that in terms of launching new local groups, the two highlights are the upcoming launches for Limerick and Waterford, which are imminent. So in fact, the new Limerick local group, branch, was actually supposed to be launched this week, but due to basically the availability of a space where to launch it, we have decided to postpone it. And the response in Limerick has been amazing. I think the members there have been extremely dedicated, extremely determined. So the activity has consisted of basically door knocking, electing a provisional committee for which many people have volunteered, trying to think about future local campaigns, meeting local residents, documenting a bit some issues we can organize about. And even next week, myself and all the Limerick committee, and I hope as many members as possible, we will try to tackle a big mass eviction that is sort of looming in Limerick, and we will try to organize strongly in order to counter this. So this has been a very pleasant, I won't say a surprise, because it's not like I was expecting the opposite, but just the enthusiasm of the Limerick members and their discipline. And so in the past month and a half or so, we have been following quite a tight schedule of door knocking, meetings, plannings, planning for the upcoming launch and so on. I can say the same for Waterford. Even though the membership there is smaller, we have been very successful door knocking, and I have tried to support the members on their every initiative, either through coordinating or being physically present. Now, one of the challenges of my role is that I've got quite a wide area to cover, and going around the place takes time. So this is something that has to be carefully planned. And I would like to say to all the local groups and branches and even unincorporated members that fall within my sort of catchment area, that the better we plan things, the more advance notice I have for what's going on, the more effective we can be in coordinating together. So for the Waterford upcoming launch, it will also be in a few weeks' time. Waterford are already preparing a small local campaign, which is, which might be a big local campaign, which is related to the lack of a rent pressure zone for half the city center of Waterford, which is scandalous. So our members really want to organize the local tenants in relation to this, and we have been really quite successful at recruiting at previous door knocking. Now, in relation to the biggest and the only actually officially existing branch that I am organizer for, the Cork branch, I think it has been amazing that we have had a return to basically real physical interaction, because it is through actual action that we build trust, not just through talk. So I hope that the ties between members, between the committee, and between myself and the committee will sort of strengthen also as we are engaged in actions that produce results. So there have been stalls, door knocking, but also an extremely difficult and extremely successful members defense in which so many core members have gotten involved. So that is also an amazing result. In terms of my future focus, I will look at strengthening the skills of the core committee and the structure so that people do not get burnt out, so that there is so that the tasks do not always fall on the same people. In coordination with Aisling, our national training and education officer, I will facilitate for any local committees, well, the core committee, but also the upcoming local committees to skill up. And I would invite as many members who are not yet on committees to also get in touch and to do this together, because the more structure and the more discipline we have in each branch, the more democratic it is, because everyone can get involved and everyone knows what's going on. And so for the future, I will support the two upcoming branches. I will work more closely with the existing Cork branch in consolidating its strengths and increasing its level of activity. But also, two areas I would like to focus on would be the relatively high number of members in the Cork branch, which are outside Cork City. And we have significant clusters that I would like to coordinate with and meet with, so that we have more relevant actions and we are, as a union, more in touch with what's happening in the more rural areas of Cork and also in smaller towns. Then I will also try to get in touch and organize small clusters of members elsewhere in Munster, for example, in Tipperary, where we have a small cluster, and even in Kerry, we have a small number of members. And one pleasant surprise during these few months has been that a number of grassroots activists from Clare have gotten in touch with me to organize initially an online open meeting to inform people about the union in Clare. And I would like to pursue this with some actions based, like physical, based on physical presence in Ennis and in Clare in the future. And I'm looking forward to coordinating with people there so that the union can grow more in these areas. And in parallel to this, I realize it's quite a lot, so I will finish soon. In parallel to this, I have been trying to liaise in conjunction also with Aaron, with groups of members which are as of yet unincorporated, but for which there is also no regional organizer in their area. So I will specifically mention members in Sligo and Leitrim, who have been very active, and we are trying to facilitate the development of a local group there, and the same very recently members in Mayo. And so I am, just to conclude, I am really open to any initiative from members who should not hesitate to get in touch, even if they have just joined the union, because support is available. Ashley, our amazing training and education officer, she can provide bespoke training for local groups on what they need. And I am there to facilitate this contact and to make sure that everyone feels capable to grow our collective strength in each local area, even if it's smaller towns, even if it's groups that have been maybe dormant for a while. Well, the strength is in the union, and the union is there to sort of foster and galvanize collective strength in every area. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Nora. I'll move on to Aaron next.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, I think we had like 5 minutes allotted for this each, but it's been we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so maybe I can go a tiny bit over. I didn't prepare a lot because I was anticipating it being 5 minutes, so I kind of kept it brief and to bullet points. So I guess for me, I wanted to just focus on the highlights for the last year. So I was in a training officer role up until last August when I became a national organizer for the union. And as people have highlighted, that's kind of quite a difficult role at times because you're spread very thin and you're covering a lot of ground, which means you don't always maybe get to give focus to individual areas that they deserve. But there was a couple of things that I thought were really inspiring over the last year. So, I mean, the main thing for me was getting back out into communities, knocking on doors and growing the membership in a way that we hadn't had for the previous little while due to COVID. So there's kind of periods where cases were quite low and, the restrictions were lifted, and it was imperative that we actually got out and started talking to people in towns and villages, in suburbs, and in the city centres across the island. I kind of wanted to focus a little bit with a case study of the Lucan Palmerstown branch launch because this was mentioned earlier today by Enda. And if you saw his slides, we started with like one member in Lucan, I think, or something like this at the start of last year. And now we have about 16 or 17. You know, these aren't mad figures, but I think I would like to give a little bit of background as to why that grew and the kind of the hope it inspires in me for the union model. So this little image here on the top right is us celebrating at a member's house after we managed to resist an eviction by a vulture fund. So Thomas, I don't know if he's here today because he's away, but he had received a notice saying that he had to be out of his house with his family because his landlord hadn't paid the mortgage. He joined CATU, we got in touch, and this was something I was initially quite pessimistic about because, you know, you're one family in a house coming up with a button heads with a vulture fund being managed by like a big corporation. And what we started to do is we started to organize in the neighborhood. So we it's quite a suburban like part of Lucan. You know, this isn't usually our stomping ground, which is more inner cities, as Enda talked about, like the north inner cities got lots of slum conditions, and these are places where I think we've naturally grown, and also places in city centres where younger renters maybe see us through online social media and stuff and kind of join because they're supportive. But I thought this was really important because somebody joined about a pressing issue, had not really heard of the union before this, and it was in an area that we didn't really have any deep roots. So we got out and we started knocking on doors, collecting contact details. We started a local petition for the neighborhood to gather more details and to get people to commit to taking window posters to say they would oppose the eviction, and people committing to direct action to physically block it if it came to that. So we had several house meetings, got some of the neighbors involved and come around a meeting in the house. And it was actually really inspiring watching people who, you know, had not heard of the union like a couple of months before, willing to say that they would be like, could put their bodies on the line to oppose an eviction in the area. So just through like even the threats of direct action, the vulture fund backed down, and we managed to get the eviction called off in writing and got a 2-year lease extension with the house being sold with the tenants in situ. And not only that, but once we started doing that and getting out into the community and talking to people, we learned that this was like far from as an isolated incident in that area. And in fact, we had a number of members, or a number of people in the area who then became members who were facing very similar circumstances where their landlord had bought the house or had been paying the mortgage, suddenly stopped, not to the notice of the tenants. And then the tenants all got letters saying that they had been bought out by a vulture fund and that they were going to be evicted to sell the property. And so you might remember there was an action around Christmas of last year with to do with Tanzila, Azim, Farouk, and Afroz, who are all being harassed by the letting agents, the vulture fund, and the receiver. And we did a phone picket of the letting agents and an email picket of all three of those bodies. And we actually got them to back down. So we got them to confirm again in writing that they would not carry out any evictions of those tenancies while you know, people couldn't find any alternative accommodation. And as people know, at the minute, housing stock is so low, it's very difficult to find alternative accommodation, particularly if you're in a vulnerable situation or if landlords aren't going to accept homeless HAP and all these other issues in the south. So that to me was like very inspiring, and going from this one member who had one individual issue, collectivizing it, building a fight in the area in like a very, you know, residential estate on the fringes of Dublin, and turning that into like a branch launch through bringing people into the union who had seen these kind of issues and had been directly involved in them, was to me like very inspiring. So then, you know, now we have a core of members in Lucan and Palmerstown, which is not, you know, an area I would have thought that would be a natural base for the union. And we have a committee in the area, and they've committed to fighting evictions and fighting more people with these issues, because I think as we grow and as we expand into lots of different areas, we'll find that these issues are quite pressing in suburbs, especially where, you know, houses were built during the boom or bought during the boom, and there's all sorts of issues with individual landlords and tenants getting kind of the sharp end of the stick. So as part of that, I've been focusing a lot on expanding the union into new areas, both rurally, so been assisting in the Sligo Leitrim branch building, which is also facing a large eviction threat now, and expanding into more suburbs. So Ballymun and Finglas is launching on Wednesday, fingers crossed. Also focusing on Kilbarrack, Donamead. So that picture there on the bottom left was from a public meeting we called in Kilbarrack. A very short notice for a member who was being evicted. And again, that was just really inspiring to see the kind of turnout that we could get at that sort of stuff when people knew their neighbor and they could see that it was directly affecting somebody that they care about. And then, yeah, so expanding into like more areas, Coolock, Blanche, so North Dublin and rural areas particularly are kind of been my priority, and then solidifying the existing South Dublin branches. So like the No Evictions campaign on the north side, we've started to pull together a public housing campaign on the south side. So the first meeting for that is actually going to be next Monday. We're getting tenants from Seagull House public housing complex in the south inner city to come and share their issues, come up with a collective plan, and hopefully sign a few up to the union. And yeah, so that's kind of exciting as well, because that's focusing on growing our membership in public housing, you know, a demographic that we don't have like a massive base in either, but one that is primed for collective organizing. Like, as I'm sure some people here have heard of the NATO research and, you know, the power the public housing tenants had when they withheld their rent. And that's also another reason I'm very excited about the Ballymun and Finglas situation. And then I've also included here a couple of pictures from Belfast actions, not to take credit for them. You know, as organizer, I have been responsible for Belfast. However, it's, as people have acknowledged, it is tough to get up there frequently, especially when there's so much stuff happening in Dublin that like it's all go all the time. But I would like to give them props for some of their good, like great actions that I think have been really inspiring in building solidarity with other movements. So here we've got the Solidarity with Grenfell campaign that they've been doing, opposing Ulster Rugby's sponsorship of, opposing Kingspan sponsorship of Ulster Rugby, who contributed to the cladding in the Grenfell disaster. So they've been standing outside their games, flyering supporters and that. And then here's them with Regina Coeli occupiers down on the bottom right. And that's the only women's hostel, homeless hostel in Belfast that was being shut down recently. And then those workers got a massive win where they were confirmed that the hostel will close, but there will be another hostel set up for as a women's refuge, which was not on the table a couple of months ago through direct action. And they occupied the hostel for like 6 weeks and did a work in. And so I think some of the Belfast members have been really great in terms of supporting their actions. And I think that one of the occupiers will be speaking at the AGM post panel today. So yeah, that would be like kind of my brief summary. So building solidarity with other movements, I think, is super important. Meeting people around like material issues, growing in areas that we don't have a base around those issues, from suburbs to rural areas to hopefully new cities as well. And just getting back out there and building a presence, because so many people don't know who we are. And the housing crisis is only getting worse. So it's important that like we're as visible as possible, and we are organized to combat what issues are going to arise. So cheers.
That's great, Aaron. Thanks for that. Aisling, do you want to go next?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Trying to share my page. So I'm Aisling, I'm the Education and Training Coordinator. I started the role in late October. And I suppose when I first started in the role, my first aims was to kind of find out where the union was at, and what the education and training was needed. So our first kind of bringing things together was through the winter school, and that was in December, and it was an online event in which I had brought together through the Education and Training Working Group a few people that were interested in NATO, the National Association Tenants Organisation, which we want to look at the rent strikes in the 70s, where 180,000 families participated across Ireland. And we have a real interest in the NATO structure and how they organised, how they stopped evictions, how they actually completed the rent strikes, which resulted in a win in ensuring that we had differential rents. And then also they pushed for the right to buy, I suppose, council housing. So the NAO research group formed from the winter school, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as I move on. Another thing that we found interesting was we did a questionnaire out to all the committees to see where people were at, how committees were developing, what they were struggling with, what they weren't, and the highs and the lows, which was really good to give me an idea of what kind of training needs to be more deeply implemented, I suppose, to each committee and branch. And then we also planned an action because we all love actions in the union. So we did plan that action around the Christmas where we plastered posters to highlight empty buildings and people that were homeless. So the different types of training, I suppose, that I have been doing on a national level mainly has been online. And the trainings that we kind of have been doing is new members. So when somebody becomes a new member, they can come to one of these training, find out what the union's about, how the union actually works, the structure of it. Committee development is another training that's kind of aimed for pre-launch committee so that they have an idea of the organising that goes into launching your committee. It's also skills and tools that you can always go back to if you find there's a lull in your committee, or if you weren't involved, I suppose, in the pre-launch of your committee, to see how exactly we organise around that, and especially with your organiser coming in to help. Committee development is kind of the next step. It explains the roles on the committee and how to implement them, and kind of try and give that more structure, like what Nora was saying earlier on. The other two main national trainings are around member defence and recruitment, two fundamental roles of the union. Obviously, one needs to go with the other. As we defend our fellow members, we also should be recruiting at all times to make us stronger and bigger so that we can defend as many cases as possible. And I suppose another national training was the AGM motions, was to give it more understanding on how to build a motion so that you, as a member of your union, are able to change our bylaws and change our constitution and have an understanding of exactly the structure and how the union works. In local trainings, which has really started to lift out now that the COVID restrictions have lifted, but because some cases come up and they go down, it has kind of damaged being going out and in person. But please God, now we'll be able to continue to do it a lot more in-person trainings, and there seems to be a lot more bookings coming in for in-person trainings. So if you feel like that you'd like to have in-person training, don't hesitate to contact me. So we did in-person training with Liberties and D12 for the public housing campaign, especially around Seagull House. It was meant to be in person, but the restrictions had changed, so it became online. And from that, we did member defence online or in person. Went out to Dunleary recently, and really good engagement from the members wanting to know more about member defence, getting more structured and organised. Recruitment, we've done in-person training where we did the training then straight out onto the doors, and we did a march on the boss in-person training as well, where a member was affected and we met up to march on the boss, and we did the trainings there and then before we did it. So the next part, kind of like, those trainings are always going to be available and they should be ran out as much as possible. So if you need them, don't hesitate. I'm really excited about the new development training, and these will be in person, please God. And the first one is the landlord and building research training, and that's available from the 9th of May. So what we're asking is any committees to ask their members and set up a see if there's an interest in it, and to let us know so that we can book you in. The landlord and building research training is really there to start helping those that are taking member defence cases or are interested in finding out information on landlords or companies or empty buildings or private housing bodies. And we will give you the skills and the tools to access the public servers that give us that information. And from that, we want to build a database that will be available for member defence to be able to share information on the landlords or the Fulcher funds or anyone that we find to help us to be able to tackle them. One member defence officer might have had an experience before you've even taken on that case. So we find that that's really important in strengthening member defence. And it also gives us a database to be able to share that information among all the committees. The other training is NATO research and training. So when we came together after the winter school, we really wanted to push out, I suppose, the knowledge around what NATO was and how they organised, and showed the similarities between our organising, because it has happened before and it has been wrote out of history more or less, and it's really hard to gather that information. It's scattered unless you know where you're going. So the NATO research and training group want to come together, and they want to interview those that were involved in the NATO experience in the residents associations that were involved in the rent strikes. So we're going to be interviewing those that were involved in it, compiling that information, using an online mapping story to obviously show you guys what research we found per county, per date lines and stuff like that. We'll also be then running out the training to the committees, which will help you to also do that in your local areas. I'll explain a little bit more on the plan for the year. And in the external training, I've gone to Bristol with Norway to Acorn training for women in organising. I felt that was a really interesting training to be going to, as we find there's more, especially around lone parents, that are being affected by homelessness, and we really should be trying to find a way of empowering women to get more involved in taking back their power and taking actions to ensure that they can access public housing. So the plan for the year is to strengthen the fundamental roles of recruitment officers and member defence officers. I have a budget allocated for ensuring that this can happen. So I have reached out to recruitment officers, and then the member defence is going to obviously link in with the landlords training. And obviously this has been a bit of a challenge because of the handover with the changing of roles with the AGM, I suppose, and nationals. So we'll be re-looking at the recruitment officers after that. To create a database with information of research on landlords, companies, private housing bodies and vulture funds, and to train member defence committees and general membership on how to research and import the information onto the database. So that's the landlord training. For the NATO, it's to roll out the national training on NATO, and that will include an introduction to why we're doing that research, how to use archives, interview training and support on interviews for your local area, planning a NATO NATO launch in the local area, and using the information as a recruitment tool or a talking point in the local area. So that really brings NATO into your recruitment and the scale, so that we can try and at least, I suppose, connect with those that are of an older generation that have experience of taking the direct actions, have experience of being involved in the rent strikes, and show that what they've done then can still be implemented now when we're implementing that. So it's to bring the two areas, I suppose, together. I also will be delivering training for the national handover for the new incoming national reps, and that includes a comms handover which has been developed with the comms team and other facilitators, and bringing that together, there will be a handbooklet and training that will go with it for national, which will hopefully run down then to the local committees, because it's very useful. It looks at Canva, it looks at interviews, it looks at all the different things that we can use for comms in local areas, not only at national. And my last bit is to offer support, and like what people were saying about new trainings, come to me if you have something that you want. If I can't do it, we can outsource it. So it doesn't mean that it won't be done. So that's what I want to offer to the members, to committees. I'm also there to offer support to the staff team, and ensuring that, especially around organisers, that their committees can have the training and access to that as soon as possible, and therefore support national for any trainings that they may have or want. I suppose the only difficulties that I felt I was coming up against was the COVID restrictions. And then obviously the spread of COVID as well. So many of the trainings have been online to date, and engagement can be low, and the benefits of doing it online don't outweigh us doing it in person, because in person it's more, I suppose, personal, and it stops the kind of isolated away from the membership, and it gives me a good sense of, I suppose, that union solidarity when we do it in person. So that's my plan for the year, and an update on what has been done and delivered.
That's great. Thanks, Alison, for that. Nisha, do you want to go now?
Yeah, Ashley, can you take your screen down when you have a chance? Thank you. So, hi everyone. So my name is Nisha. I'm the staff admin since August. I'm going to share. It's kind of hard to make admin sound particularly interesting, and a lot of it is quite routine. But I have a few kind of talking points just to share with everyone. So. Everyone see that okay? Yeah. Okay, so started the role on the 9th of August. Primarily kind of contacts we get are driven through email, mostly through the catuireland@gmail.com account. We also get some through info@catuireland.org, which isn't really used regularly, so we just kind of move stuff across. Been around about 750 conversation threads since I took the role up. Little bit hard to get an exact figure on that because we're using Gmail. We don't have kind of corporate software that we measure this stuff with, so it's going to be a lot of counting to get to that number, but that's the rough idea. An admin phone, or a general kind of union phone, was brought in with the introduction of my role, and that means that kind of it's been very useful kind of for people with general queries, people who might not be members with initial questions. It's kind of an easy way to ask those questions, and also for people in branches and members, bits and bobs they might need. Third big part then is membership reporting. So that's kind of up-to-date contact lists for branches and for general membership, and each branch has access to their own membership report. So on the highlights, one of the main ones is, so the way membership reporting is done, it was a little bit difficult when it came in. We used a database called MemberPress through WordPress, and it was quite difficult to get branch by branch membership lists together. So I found a way through a plugin basically that you can make it a bit easier, and it's now kind of a click of a button, you get your up-to-date member list whenever you need it, and branches have access to that. And the feedback I've had, excuse me, from branches has been good, that it's it's useful for things like phone banking and having access to your membership up to date whenever you need it. And I kind of check that whenever I work 5 days a week, Sunday to Thursday, and I kind of try and make sure that that gets checked every day. So every branch has more or less an up-to-date list to the day as much as possible. Another highlight, kind of as I mentioned before, is accessibility for initial contact through the phone line. There's been, I can't put an exact number on it, but there's definitely been people who have called in kind of just curious about the union. And I'm not an organizer, I wouldn't profess to have the level of knowledge that Aaron or Nora or Annie would have, for example. But I can kind of, answer the initial questions and put people in touch with the right people, and that's been really useful. And we've definitely had people kind of join the union on the back of that, so that's really good. Third one then is hiring processes for the training and Munster organizer roles. So when I came in to the admin role, I think some of the feedback from people on the national committee was that because hiring processes are quite intensive, there's so many different parts to it, that it was really challenging for people trying to do that voluntarily. So in my role, I've had the time when we've done hiring processes to do a lot of the admin around it. So putting up the job descriptions, organizing the CVs, booking in the interviews, and being on the panel, all that kind of stuff. And I think they've been a success for Aisling and for Nora's role towards the end of last year. The next one then is availability of ancillary support for national teams and local branches. So primarily for me, that's been with comms, helping out a little bit with kind of social media posting, finance with kind of requests coming in from branches, passing them on to finance, and phone banking then, particularly I'd say in the last couple of months, So when branches or when Aaron or Nora are doing phone banking in their different areas, I can jump in and support that, either phone banking or text banking. You know, when I have the time, and that's been pretty good. And the last one, then in terms of a highlight, response efficiency. So I've tried as much as possible to make sure that things, you know, things don't get stuck. I try and move things along as quickly as I can, respond to people as quickly as I can, and there's never really been a backlog. So that's been a highlight. I think. I look at a few issues, a few challenges. I'm kind of conscious of the fact that because my wages are paid by the union membership, I want to kind of be accountable, and it's not 100% great. There have been a couple of issues. Just want to run through them. So, as you're probably all aware from seeing the emails last weekend, there were some issues with the voting software for the AGM, which, you know, kind of, I would say, fell on me. It was an oversight that shouldn't have happened, to do with basically with security. So we had to move very quickly across then onto the choice voting software that everyone's been using now. So that was an issue. Also, the research team had a very good survey that was supposed to run, and it had kind of logic flows and functions that didn't quite appreciate the level of detail in them, which meant that the survey didn't work out the way it should have. It's also an issue. In a more general sense, just to say on both of those things, just, you know, an apology to membership for those things happening. They shouldn't have happened, and there's definitely a lot learned from them. Newsletters. So just this is, I guess, more on engagement. So sending out newsletters, I'm kind of looking at the stats in terms of engagement on them, and they're generally not great. So it's kind of looking at how to increase engagement or how to make the output a bit more interesting, so that we can kind of increase the engagement participation in them. And then the last one, efficiency versus outcomes and platform changes. So that's like, I've kind of Stephen alluded to the fact that I'm quite keen to come up with ideas about how we improve things or save money here and there. And sometimes in a little bit, maybe too much in a rush with that. And it's kind of, you know, just being a little bit more slow and meticulous when having those ideas, I think has been a learning. Then just a rundown of some ad hoc activities. So we have public liability insurance now for the union, which is good for kind of some branches when trying to organise meetings. Have found that that was a stumbling block, that you needed insurance. So we have that now, and every branch can use it. Coordination of union involvement in the Zapatista visit. As you might remember, the delegation from the Zapatista people came in at the end of, well, August, September last year, and so it's kind of involved in coordinating that, which was quite pleasing. I ran an admin workshop a couple of months ago with a few different branches, which was quite useful just to get a sense from admins at local level of where they're at, what they need more help with and stuff like that. I'm going to try and do that again a couple more times this year. The address update drive, that was when we sent post out to every member just to make sure that addresses were up to date. That resulted in 140 or 50 people coming back and saying I've moved house since, so there was a lot of kind of admin involved in that. Phone banking, as I mentioned, that's what it says in the tin. It's just helping organisers and local groups with phone banking when they need it. The admin of the hiring process, as I mentioned again, it's just, you know, bits and bobs involved in the last two that we've done, and I'll be available to support that again in the future if people want that. AGM prep, so that's just been kind of minuting the hustings, distributing those minutes, getting all the bits and bobs set up. And then coordinating outreach requests. So we get a lot of we get loads and loads of requests from students, from unions, from different kind of groups. And it's just kind of coordinating them, making sure they get to the right people, and making sure that we fulfill as much as we can. And I think, oh, one more thing. So just for the months ahead, so I'm going to be focusing on a handover and kind of coordinating with incoming reps and particularly branch admins to see what they want from me and how I can help them. Database management, so just looking at how we can improve membership database, make it more efficient, and, you know, keep making it more efficient as we can. Engaging with lapsed members, so that is around members who, for whatever one reason or another, whose dues have lapsed, and kind of getting in touch with them, seeing how we can help them get back kind of involved. And identifying meaningful engagement methods. So that comes back to the point around kind of the newsletter and stuff like that, and just seeing how we can increase engagement as much as possible. That's everything for me. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thanks, Nisha. I guess we can move on to the questions part for the staff. The first question I see here is, how many people do we have available to physically defend housing? Possession of tenants, like, that's going to depend on what branch you're in. Really, theoretically 1,600, but you know, each branch will have different number of members, and it's also important to highlight that, like, eviction defence is not just about being physically there, although that's extremely important. There's a lot of work that goes into it from people who can't be physically there, sharing updates on social media to get people down. Someone might be minding the kids so someone else can go out. You know, there's lots of unseen work that goes into eviction defences. That's important to highlight that as well. But building capacity for eviction defence is something every branch should be working on, essentially. Has a drill been performed for anti-eviction mobilisations? I guess, does any organiser want to talk about that? Because that's part of their role.
I mean, I guess I can chip in. Like, in some sense, every eviction is a drill for the next one. And there's, you know, there are trainings that happen quite frequently. I do know several branches have run like specific drills around it. The anti-eviction campaign for one, Mountjoy Dorset have done one as well, I think. And then also, like, sometimes we just have call-outs that, you know, we think there's an eviction threat, we mobilize people, and then it doesn't actually happen. It kind of dies down, or it gets called off beforehand. And those are sort of drills for evictions as well, because you see how many people you have available on short notice. So to answer Gavin's question, like, yes, basically, and every time we do an eviction, we've realized what our capacity is, and to use a wanky organizing term, it's a structure test, and then we know like how many people we can reliably mobilize for the next one.
That's great. The next question is, could you provide more new member trainings on evenings and weekends? Ashley, are you used to it?
So any of the trainings mainly are in the evenings or on the weekends. And there's no problem if anyone wants to schedule a training, just contact me and we can work around times and days that suit anyone.
That's great. The next question is, do we have an inter-associative liaison officer to build links with allied associations in Ireland and share information? We don't have any specific officer whose job it is to like build links with other groups. We tend to just reach out when we have an idea, and other groups will reach out to us when they have ideas. It's not a bad idea to have an officer specifically for that. But yeah, as of now, we don't have someone specifically responsible for that. The next question is, did anti-eviction campaign do a drill recently? I'm not sure what drill.
So that was Aisling just answering the question.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's all the questions so far.
If there's no other questions, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, but are people from the research group, the research group, okay to go ahead with the presentation?
Yeah, we're here and good to go.
Grand. I'll hand it over to you, Shannon. And if anyone has any questions about the presentation, put it in the YouTube chat and we'll answer them.
Okie dokie. Can you see that screen there?
Yeah, that's all good.
Grand. Okie dokie. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shannon Walsh, and I'm a member of the CATU research group. Michelle, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Hi, Shannon. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Michelle. I'm working with Shannon in the research group as well. Thanks.
Grand. So we're going to just talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing over the past year. So where did we come from? The research group was formed as a result of motions raised at last year's AGM. You can see the motions here on the screen. Going forward, we're going to refer to number 1 as third-party brokerage, number 2 as the financialisation of housing, number 3 as subletters, and number 4 as property owners. So what did we do? We had our first meeting the 24th of June 2021. We decided at that meeting to break the topics into 3 subgroups. A would look after third-party brokerage, B the financialisation of housing, and C/D would look at both subletting and property owners in the union. Once this was done, the subgroups then organised their own meetings, and the full group came together for a meeting to discuss on the first Thursday of every month. We've recently changed this to the first Thursday of every second month, as it was agreed we don't need to meet as a full group that often. So now we'll talk a bit about where we actually got with each topic. So I'm going to hand you over to Michelle, who'll discuss third-party brokerage.
Thanks very much, Shannon. So what happened was we decided, Marcus, myself, Ryan and Anya were looking at the third-party brokerage mandate. And this was saying for us to try and see how many kinds of, or how common third-party brokerage was in rental agreements. So we were really looking at people protecting deposits and what happens within that, what current solutions are there, and to see if they're any good and if they're working, and if not, to see if there's anything that the union or related body could do to provide this kind of a protection or a service to make it less that you're handing over your money to a landlord and don't have any oversight of it after that. So over 88% voted in favour of this before. So if Shannon can move to the next slide. Thank you, Shannon. So we split up and looked at different regions, and we found that there is a lot of different things going on, and we can learn from this. And it was great to have Anya and Marcus and Ryan, who had great experience and experience from their work and this kind of thing. So it's great working with them. We found in the UK that there has been mandatory protection of deposits since 2007, so almost 15 years. There's 2 main systems by which they do this. First, when you tenant pay your deposit to your landlord, and then that's paid to a scheme provider. So it's kept protected until your tenancy is finished, and then the scheme provider will release it when any disputes have been resolved or any decisions have been made. The other system that they use is a insurance scheme, but it's not allowed in Scotland. It's where you pay your landlord your deposit, and then they pay a premium to an insurer to cover if their landlord is not able to pay back. Some issues there, which we might get into later. Then in Northern Ireland, there are the same custodial scheme whereby there's someone protecting the deposit itself until the end of your tenancy, and there's also that insurance scheme. In the Republic of Ireland, it's important to note that the tenancy is considered the tenant's until the landlord has established a right to it, with the RTB going through a mediation process or going through the courts. But we don't have those schemes in place to protect deposits. Then in Australia and New Zealand, there are interesting schemes. The tenant has to be kept informed of where the deposit is. So in a lot of states, there's either a shared account between the landlord and the tenant, or the real estate agent will hold the deposit and both the landlord and tenant are informed of where that is. But then in other states, you've got the bond administrator. They're calling deposits bonds. That's how they refer to them. But this is oftentimes, like in New South Wales, this is part of a government department of fair trading, and they hold the deposit for you. They also organise the dispute resolution service, and at the end of the tenancy, they're the ones to release the money back to who it's owed to. Then in the US and Canada, there's many states that require the landlord to hold the deposit in an escrow account, so some kind of visibility there. But then in some places you have an insurance in place of a deposit whereby you pay an amount as a tenant to a insurance premium, which is covering the same security that your deposit would cover. It's worth noting, but again, there may be some issues with that. The other thing is that in Ontario, we didn't see much in Canada, but that instead of the deposit being something that's separate, it's what's used as your last month's rent. So if we move on to the next slide, just to say what issues we saw coming up fairly frequently with these different systems. So the first one was, what is the value for money of what people are doing in different regions? I suppose let's start off by saying that in the Republic of Ireland, Indicon had written a report around this, around should we have a deposit protection scheme in Ireland, and it's from 2012, so quite old, but it's saying that the main point that was against us ever doing this was that it was the cost of running the scheme. But in Australia, they do this in New South Wales through no extra department. It's a department that's already existing there, a Department of Customer Services in that particular state, and it's got no employees, so they can't do this. But in the UK, where it's running efficiently through these with the custodial schemes through these external agencies, it's costing a lot for the amount of wrongfully held deposits that will be returned to tenants. So the numbers in the brackets are giving the references to where this has come from, which is in a slide at the end, and we can provide that information if we're interested in looking into this further. So the other issues are lack of compliance. Really, some of the systems rely again on tenants taking the landlords to court if the system is not being followed and they're not being protected appropriately. Some of the insurance schemes, if the landlord in the UK pays for the insurance scheme, you know, and the landlord doesn't fulfill the terms of that insurance contract, then the landlord has to take them to court. So not hugely efficient. And really, when we're looking at all of this, we need to look at the efficiency of dispute resolution, because a landlord can say you will deposit for X and Y, but how do we determine that that's fair? And that's really what's going to determine how we best have a system to protect those deposits. So it's something to look at in future. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Shannon. Thank you. So I suppose when we looked at what will be the difficulties in CATU providing this kind of a service, we may want to become an authorised financial institution, which I really don't know about, and we would need to look into this. And the question came in our group as, is this the best use of union resources, and is this where activities should be focused? But the benefits would be that there'd be a more formalised treatment of deposits, and in theory this should allow us to have more access to dispute services and to have an easier transition from one tenancy to another and be more accountable. So I think on the next slide I just have the last piece. So yeah, so our next steps are that there's a brilliant survey been launched, and that will give us great data and inform us on why or what we should do next in this area. And we need to determine from that, especially the experiences of people in Northern Ireland and how it's been working, the systems that they have in place. So with that information, really we'll move forward and see what the next best thing to do is. So with that, I'll hand back over to Shannon. The next slide just says the sources on it, but we can probably skip over that and people can have it to hand if they want to look further into it. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Right, so then we'll go on to Group B, the financialisation of housing. So Group B gave a good go of it, but in the end, this topic proved way too broad to cover. It's important when suggesting topics for us to cover that you bear in mind that some things are going to be beyond the scope of a group of volunteers. However, it has been suggested, and I would agree with this, that this topic could be broken down into smaller bits and disseminated to the union this way. So one such way would be through the reading group, which I will discuss further on. Another way would be through leaflets or infographics on specific aspects of the process and effect of the financialisation of housing. Then we had Group C/D, so subletters and property owners. I was in this group myself. We decided to put these two topics together as they both basically came down to conflicts of interest. So we decided on two things we would like to know before making our recommendations on this. How is this handled in other unions similar to ourselves? And how many people in our union is actually in either situation? So first, we went through any documentation available on the different unions' websites. There was a vast difference in what was available online from the different unions, and none of them had an explicit policy on either topic or conflicts of interest in general. Then we sent an email explaining what we were doing, asking for any information they could provide to about 15 different unions. Unfortunately, only one got back to us in the end, but that answer plus what we were able to get off the websites kind of gave us an idea of the usual approach. So next thing we wanted to do was to establish what situations our union members were in. To do this, we developed a survey to issue to everyone in the union residing on the island of Ireland. The survey also contains questions about deposits, as Michelle was saying. And first we conducted a pilot run of the survey within the research group. Next, we'll be issuing this survey by email after the AGM, but I'm going to pop the link to it in the chat on YouTube as well, in case you just want to get a head start on it. We would really appreciate if you could take the time to fill it out. It is completely anonymous and will only take a minute. We did consider having the survey completed and findings ready to present here, but we decided it would be of more benefit to use this platform as a way of promoting it and getting the highest response rate possible. So what else were we at? So number one, research tool documents. So the brains behind this is Michelle Russell. This is a list of sources where members can find information that might be useful when planning local campaigns or planning membership defence. The three main areas in it are demographic information about areas, ownership of buildings or other things relating to their legal status, and landlords' backgrounds and business interests. The intention is that this document will give members a starting point for doing their own research for their local branch's activities. Off the back of this document, Michelle is developing training with Aisling, the training and education officer, and other people from the education group. This will be a hands-on training using most, if not all, the resources mentioned in this document. It is intended to make sure the local committees have the skills to research landlords and companies alongside the skills to plan member defence. Next, then we had the reading group. So the reading group started up in August 2021. We looked at a range of different texts and even a podcast at one point. We haven't had a meeting in a while, but it was discussed at the last research group meeting that we want to get it going again. As I mentioned earlier, it could be a very useful method for educating ourselves further on the different aspects of financialisation of housing. Then we had ad hoc research. So we were available to assist with any ad hoc research the union may need. We didn't get asked to do much, but now everyone knows we're available to help. We might get asked a bit more often. Next, then, we have facilitating research requests. So we had some outside organisations and individuals ask for assistance with their own research projects, and we were able to assist them by finding them suitable people within the union to speak to. Again, it's only happened a few times, but now that you all know this is something we're happy to assist with, you can direct people to us. And finally, we have the archive for the housing struggle in Ireland. So the research team is working on building an organisational archive for CATU, which will include records from Irish housing movements that predate the union. So this project is a collaboration between the research team and the PhD project of CATU member Tommy Gavin, who is researching vacancy and dereliction. The union is growing quickly, and there is a risk that important information about the work that has gone into the early years of the union will be lost. CATU needs a system of records management. The CATU archive project is building this system. The objectives of the project are, in the short term, to build out the system of record keeping to facilitate the growth of the union and capture records that are deemed to be worth preserving. Medium term, to preserve and store information useful for developing tactics and strategy, and deepening the potential for training and education. And in the long term, to provide a union infrastructure for preserving our history and to promote a social memory of struggle. In practice, this is slightly mundane. It means finalising some consent forms about legal ownership of records, for example, photographs, finalising a collection policy about what will be preserved as standard, for example, minutes from meetings, and setting the standards of how and where records will be stored until CATU has a physical office. So the archive is currently being designed to capture records relating to the CATU research project on the rent strikes in the 1970s, led by the National Association of Tenants Organisation, and on Tommy's project on vacancy and dereliction, housing occupations and anti-evictions in Ireland from 2011 to 2023. The goal of the project is to start to build the archive that CATU can still be using in 50 years. So our plan going forward. Going forward, we'll continue on with any ongoing projects and assist with any ad hoc research requests as they come in. I think the main change we should be looking at, though, is for more integration with the rest of the union. We are a resource and you should be using us. So I hope that now you all know exactly that what we're happy to help with, that you will be getting onto us. So finally, then, if you want to get involved with the research group, you can email us at caturesearch@gmail.com. You'll find this email on the website, and I'll stick it in the YouTube chat as well. Now will actually probably be the best time to join. As we finish up with the topic set by last year's AGM, we will have an opportunity to restructure ourselves and make sure everyone is put to work. As I said before, now you know we are here and able to provide assistance with anything research related. Please do not hesitate to contact us. Also, feel free to send us in any suggestions for topics. I would particularly appreciate any and all suggestions for topics for the reading group. It doesn't have to be a book or an article. It could be a podcast, a relevant YouTube video or episode of a TV show, or like a documentary or something. I just ask that it's something that is freely available publicly so I can send it out to everybody. So finally, thank you very much for your time today, and to Michelle for joining me, and I hope to be getting lots of new members to the research group soon. Thanks.
I was just keeping an eye on the chat box there for any questions. If there's any questions now, like feel free to ask them at the end of the presentation. There was a couple of things in there, more of a comment than a question, but just a note on terminology. So just being careful that we distinguish between the North and the South, and don't use Ireland to refer to just the South of the island. But beyond that, I think that was really good, guys. There's no other comments or questions I can see. And yeah, the email I posted in the chat as well, if anybody is up for getting involved in the research group.
Yeah, fair play, lads. That was a great presentation. Absolute like Trojan amount of work going in there, and it's really inspiring to see all the work that you are doing over the past year and your hopes for the next year. Thanks
very much.
Apologies for the terminology used incorrectly. Thanks for
so I think if there's no other questions, we'll probably move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the reading out of the motions, before we go on to have a break. So because we're running half an hour ahead of schedule, we'll probably have an hour break. But in that hour break, if you haven't voted, I would strongly encourage you to vote, especially as we're going to read out all the motions, so you have no excuse not to. So Ali, are you there to read out the motions? I can maybe share my screen. Let me just...
Yeah, hi, I'm here. I'm just trying to sort out my microphone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, so I'll just get started then. So
I'm just going to try to share my screen so we can have the motions on... oh, sorry, I figure out how to do it now.
Can Ali not share her screen and then it's easier?
I can do, but I'm following off a doc because the formatting on the website was hard for me to read.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm actually having issues.
I can still share it.
Yeah, or even if someone else wants to share it if they're available. Sorry, I'm just having issues with my laptop. There's just like a warning sign that comes up every time I try to click share.
No, I can share it. You'll just see my notes, like my highlighting and stuff, which is fine.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that.
Before we move on to that, actually, there is a question that just came in. Maybe it's worth addressing while you get the motion started.
Sure.
Greg asks if that report can be emailed out to members after the AGM, because there's a lot to take in there. I think we can do a post AGM pack and include the finance stuff and the research stuff if the research team are happy with that. I think they've already hopped off. Oh no, Shannon's still
Sorry,
here.
no, I'm here. I'm really sorry. I was reading the other chat and not paying attention for a second. What did you say?
Is it possible to get those slides emailed to members after the AGM?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Will I just send it to the main? Oh, actually, no, I've already sent them into the main CATU email. If you can feel free to send them out. I think I took all my little notes off it. So
Brilliant. So there we go. We can do a post AGM kind of pack with everything in it and send it out to members. That's great. I can share my screen. Yeah, Louise, just give me 1 second.
Perfect. Yeah, no one wants to see my highlighting.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Does it look okay?
Yeah, that looks good.
Cool.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So the first category is union structures. The first motion is the establishment of regional networks for unincorporated members, which was proposed by CATU Cork. This union notes that CATU currently has a significant existing membership base outside our major cities and towns, currently unincorporated in branches or local groups. This number is as high as 20 to 30% of our currently existing members. And this union also notes that housing issues in rural areas can be of a different nature to those mostly encountered in our urban areas, and they often need their own strategies to be constructed. The union believes that this lack of representation and communication can have a detrimental effect on such members' engagement with the wider union and its structures. Although a local group needs 15 members to be incorporated as such, and also to gain national representation, this can be a difficult process to achieve in small towns and rural areas. Until a rural area is to achieve this number of local members, other structural supports should be put in place to encourage communication and interaction among such members and with the wider union. This union believes the creation of a rural members network would aid in bringing isolated members together and to give them a better voice and support structure in fighting for housing justice and other community issues. The union also believes that such a network will aid members in setting up functional local groups in such areas in the medium to long term. In the spirit of cooperation and for the long-term health of the union as an all-island organization, a non-binding aspect of this motion endeavors members of established CATU groups and branches to assist where possible in outreach work with rurally based and unincorporated members. This can take the form of inviting members to urban areas for skill shares or branch meetings, or assisting with stalls or door knocking in an outside area. This work should not be burdensome as to detract from already existing branches, but to be ideally attempted every 2 months or so. This union resolves that a rural members network to be created and to be formed and organized on a provincial basis, Munster, Connacht, Leinster, and Ulster. Each provincial network to meet online or in person monthly or at other times of their choosing. That if each network reaches 20 members, that they are entitled to 1 position on the national committee so as to ensure that issues of rural and unincorporated members are represented nationally. This union also resolves that if members of such a network in the future are to establish a local CATU group of 15 members or more in a specific designated area, that their numerical weighting be revoked from their rural network. However, such members would still be allowed to attend network meetings to give further advice and to support other members of the network yet to establish their own local area groups. Established regional and local branches should also determine the wider geographical areas under their own remit and capacity, and to decide whether an outside area is either better to be attached to a currently existing branch or to be part of a rural members network. Therefore, this motion suggests amendments to the current bylaws of the union, namely section 18 and subsections, which states, section 18, every individual member of the company will be a member of a regional branch, except where there is none, operating in their geographic area. All members living within the scope of an established branch will be members of that branch. This subsection will be amended as thus, and it will now read 18. Every individual member of the company will be a member of a regional branch, except where there is none operating in their geographic area. All members living within the scope of an established branch will be members of that branch. Members unattached to and living outside the scope of an established branch to their isolated geographic area may become a member of the Rural Members Network branch, organized provincially with 1 branch operational for each province in Ireland. Functional regional and local branches are also to determine the immediate and wider geographic areas that realistically fall under their own remit and capacity, and that are best served by being attached to them until such members in an area form a local group of their own. Eligible members in geographic areas better served by being part of a rural members network are to be generally determined against the proximity, distance, and remit of their closest existing branch or local group. This should be determined in consultation with that closest branch or local group. In the case of such a consultation not happening, members who deem themselves not within the scope of a regional branch or group and who view themselves as being part of a rural or geographically isolated area may be admitted to the Rural Members Network on a case-by-case basis with the agreement of the concerned members themselves and an organizer. Paragraph 18.1, which states that members not within the scope of any established branch shall not be eligible to elect delegates to an annual general meeting, will be amended as thus. Members not within the scope of any established branch shall be eligible to be a member of a rural members network branch within their given provincial territory. If such a branch is to have more than 20 members, they are entitled to one national representative and are eligible to elect delegates to an annual general meeting. In terms of the AGM, each rural members network branch will have the rights and obligations of a regular branch. And finally, paragraph 18.2, which states that each individual member may only be a member of one branch, will be amended as thus. Each individual member may only be a member of one branch. However, in the case of members within a rural members network branch, if members within such a branch consolidate and reestablish their own local CATU group of 15 members or more, they may remain as participants within their rural members network branch, but without voting rights, and the numbers of such a local group to be disestablished from the numerical makeup of the rural members network branch.
There's a lot of reading in this, so if you're feeling swamped at any point, we can swap in and out.
No, it's okay. I can just breathe, but now we're moving on to the next motion, which is motion 2, internal structures and union democracy, which is proposed by CATU Dunleary. This union notes that while national representatives are elected to represent the members of their local group, the current structure of the national committee is unknown or confusing for many union members, and the structures to guide national representatives in making contributions to national committee decisions are insufficient. This impedes the members from having a sense of ownership over the union as a whole and being unable to assess if they are happy with the work of their democratically elected representative. It also makes it difficult for national representatives to understand what their local group wishes them to do and to act accordingly. The union believes that while representatives to the national committee must maintain a degree of independence from the local level of organizing due to dealing with personal information and sometimes time-sensitive nature of their work, local members also have the right to have a say in national decision-making, following the goals of democracy and transparency in the union. The main role of the National Committee should be fulfilling the mandate given to them by the union's members, as expressed in decisions made at the general meetings of the membership, linking up and supporting local organizing, and carrying out the day-to-day tasks of the union. The union resolves that the specific roles and committees for the National Committee should be explained to members before putting themselves forward. To enhance cohesion and communication between local and national committees, national meetings should be set as far in advance as possible, minimum of 2 weeks, with agendas and minutes containing relevant information circulated to local groups, branches, and caucuses, forwarded to their respective emails. Agendas should be circulated when the date and time is set for a meeting and at a minimum 2 weeks before. The intention is to ensure that local members can have their say on national committee decisions through their elected representative and determine if the local group, branch, caucus is being appropriately represented on a national level, as they have the right to recall if not. Accordingly, all national meetings should have a proper structure, including an agenda and chair. Local agendas should focus on local work and action. However, national officers should give a brief overall oral or written report on the last month on a national level at local meetings. Contact details for national representatives and their roles should be accessible by members and updated whenever anyone new joins or leaves the national committee. The members of a local group branch should be made aware of their elected national representative does not attend 3 consecutive national committee meetings. This could provide a basis for a local group or branch to exercise its right to recall the vote if it decides to do so. That's the end of motion 2. Is my speed okay? Am I reading too fast? I can sometimes talk really fast.
No, it's good, I think.
Okay, good. Moving on to motion 3, voting and representation rights for caucuses within the union, proposed by CATU Fairview Marino Clontarf. This union notes that the purpose of a caucus is to give a voice to marginalized groups and to embody them with structural power within the union. We want to create spaces for collaboration, solidarity, and discussion from which problems within the union can be challenged and ideas for the direction of the union can be fostered. AGM motions are powerful tools for achieving both of these aims, which so far have not been available to caucuses. This union believes that caucuses should have the same rights as local groups to propose motions and campaigns at the AGM, and not rely solely on a national rep, who may not always perfectly reflect the views and wishes of the caucus, and who has limited power to initiate structural change in the union and to enact change within the union. This union resolves that going forward, caucuses should have the opportunity to propose AGM motions and campaigns in the same way that local groups do.
Brilliant. I think I'm going to hand over screen sharing to Nisha because the wording on the ballot paper is slightly different for some of these, like pretty minor, and also the statements of opposition are there. So I'm going to let Nisha share their screen with the choice voting software, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
I think it makes sense to do it now, Nisha. Yeah.
Apologies on that. I was working off the website motions, so that's my bad. Apologies for that.
Sorry, yeah, there is a opposition statement, right? Will I read out the opposition statement?
Yeah, or if you're okay to read it out, or else we can maybe ask Nisha to read out the opposition statements if you prefer, because you're doing a lot of reading.
Yeah, if you want to read it out and then I can just like take a breather, that would be great. And just let me know when you want me to jump back in.
Cool. Nisha, are you okay to do that?
Yeah, no problem.
Cool.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the statement of opposition on motion number 3, which reads, this is a statement in opposition to the proposed motion on voting and representation rights for caucuses within the union, asking people to vote no for the reasons given below. The authors of this statement include members of the CATU LGBTQ caucus, which is the only existing caucus within CATU. We would like to highlight that this motion was developed without the involvement of our caucus. Additionally, at the most recent LGBTQ+ caucus meeting, there was an extended discussion of the motion with no decision being taken to support it, including for the reasons set out below. This motion presents a risk of providing some members with an undue amount of influence over setting union strategy and policy. For example, if this motion was passed, some members would have the opportunity to bring forward motions through both their local branch, the LGBTQ+ caucus, and other caucuses which may be established in the future, of which they could become members. We argue that this violates the principle of our union, that all members should have an equal say in making decisions, and could also be abused by people acting in bad faith. While we recognise that the function of the caucuses is to address the underrepresentation of oppressed groups within CATU, we think this motion is not the correct approach to this issue. Caucuses currently have other means to achieve this, including through the representative which they elect to the National Committee, and by asking the National Committee or other branches to take forward motions on their behalf at the AGM. We think that if caucus members are isolated within their local branches to such a degree that they cannot take forward motions through their branch, this is a serious issue which our caucus should seek to challenge. Our opposition to this motion also draws on our experiences as LGBTQ+ caucus members over the past 6 months since it became an entity. In our view, the caucus structure is still being worked out. Related to this, the LGBTQ+ caucus has been relatively inactive and has not been involved in organising. In our view, motions taken forward to the CATU AGM should be grounded in the experiences and challenges encountered in our organising work. There is not yet any basis for this to happen, understandably, considering we're still in the nascent stages of the caucus itself, given that we only formed officially in autumn 2021. We are not necessarily opposed to the spirit of this motion. As above, the LGBTQ+ caucus structures are still in the process of evolution. We look forward to developing effective ways of organising ourselves, ensuring our interests are represented within CATU, and discussing this with any other caucuses which may be formed in future. We would argue that any such proposals should come from caucus members themselves. Ultimately, it just doesn't feel democratic for the decision-making of caucuses to be made outside of the collective agreement of caucus members. For these reasons, we're asking members to vote against this motion number 3. Ali, do you want to take back, or will it want me to take it on for a little while?
I'll take over, but then I might ask you to take it back at the last category. The community issues, I think it was.
Sure, no problem.
And we're now on motion 4, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so motion 4, if you would like to share your screen, perfect. So will I read from, has the wording changed on the voting platform, or can I use the website wording?
I think the most up to date is possibly, there might be some small things on the choice voting that are a little bit more up to date.
Okay, perfect. I'll just read from here as well. So the union notes that the extraordinary circumstances which asylum seekers experience In light of increased pressure on Ireland's asylum process, we believe that the national policy of CATU should be to waive membership fees for asylum seekers. This is in alignment with CATU's mission. Awareness of this policy could facilitate local branches outright to migrant communities and people living in direct provision. The union believes that the national policy of CATU should be to waive membership fees for asylum seekers, undocumented folks, and people living in direct provision. Could you scroll down a little bit? Thank you. The fee waiver would be optional. This union resolves that CATU membership fees will be waived for asylum seekers and people living in direct provision. The union notes that the importance of adequate and fair representation on a national level, the value of creating deep local roots and offering member representation on a level that is as local as possible, the unique challenges of organizing in different contexts and communities, the importance and relevance of local member input on the union activities, the negative impact on the momentum of local organizing experienced in the process of Belfast split. This union believes that branch splits should include local input on strategy and implementation, that organizers assigned to local areas have a responsibility to such areas to support them during a split process, that final arrangements regarding plans and timelines of a split process are at the discretion of local members, that national representation should be increased proportionally as a branch grows. This union resolves that when a city or region-wide local group reaches branch status, their assigned organizer will approach the local committee to discuss the prospect of splitting into more localized groups. That a meeting will be organized with all local members encouraged to attend to discuss and consider options and priorities for the future of the group. After this meeting, the local committee will draft a plan with their assigned organizer. This plan will be presented for discussion, amendments, and voting to the local members. This process can happen as many times as is necessary until 75% of the members in attendance are in agreement. If an agreement on this plan is not met within 6 months of its proposal, the split will not take place. There will then be a minimum cool-off period of 12 months until the idea of a split can be proposed again. If a branch decides not to split during the 6-month decision-making process and/or during the 12-month cool-off period, national representation will be increased proportional to the size of the branch, with branches of 15 members having 1 representative, 80 members, 2 representatives, branches with 200 members having 3 representatives, and branches with 400 members having 4 representatives. This is motion 6. The union notes that the union currently employs 1 full-time national organizer, 1 part-time national organizer, and only 1 part-time regional organizer. The importance of the use of paid organizers in establishing the union within different contexts. The unique legislative and political context within Ulster, the need for the aims of the union to be translated into this context, and the need for region-specific knowledge to do so. The difficulties arising from the Belfast split and the possibilities of branches emerging in Newry, Derry, etc. The union believes that the national organizer positions are spread too thin to organize effectively nationwide. With both national organizers located in Dublin, an overemphasis has been placed on branches there, while branches in other provinces have struggled from lack of direction. In contrast, with the recent appointment of a Munster regional organizer, much progress has been made in the region, with Limerick and Waterford branches soon being launched. Prioritizing the appointment of regional organizers in the future will aid the union's development in areas of potential. The union resolves that national organizers will be phased out in preference of regional organizers. With the end of current national contracts, an open hiring competition for a new regional organizer should begin. The regional organizer's role will be to maintain, support, and defend existing membership in their region, and expand the union into new areas previously unorganized in their region. Regional organizers will be hired in regions based on the potential for expansion in said regions, with consideration for the levels of activity of the region's members and other unique factors. A regional organizer for Ulster will be considered the immediate priority. The financial viability of such a position will be continually assessed, and the hiring process will begin as soon as possible, at most within 3 months of this motion passing. Existing Ulster branches will be consulted to devise an appropriate method of involvement in the hiring process. Motion 7 for improving democratic oversight of paid staff, proposed by Liberties Rialto. The union notes that the key role for staff organizers in the union is to strengthen membership. Currently, engagement between local branches and staff organizers regarding membership building is carried out on an ad hoc basis. This union believes that we need to enhance and make explicit links between local branches and staff organizers in order to increase democratic oversight and member involvement in organizing. This union resolves to develop the following communication and work processes. Staff organizers to meet quarterly with branch chairs and admins for a staff liaison meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to communicate to branch members the time allocated to the branch for the coming quarter by the branch staff organizer, to engage with branch members regarding the best use of that time to grow membership within the branch, and to communicate and engage with plans for membership growth or new branch launches in neighboring areas. Staff organizers develop a plan for outlining the focus of their work, organizing and growing their membership for each coming quarter, and communicate it to its members through quarterly staff newsletter, outlining the locations they will focus on, growing membership, and the rationale for doing so. Organizers allow for input and feedback from members on their plan. In order to further involve members without a local branch, organizing staff to hold a monthly open Zoom session with an open invitation to all general members to drop in as needed in order to help assess in which areas without branches that staff organizing is needed.
Now, just for motion 8, Ali, we're going to switch back over to the website because the choice voting has a character limit. It's quite a long motion, so we might just switch back over just for that one.
Yep, I'll switch back to motion 8 on my notes. Okay, so motion 8 is for the democratization and increased accountability of staffing within CATU, as proposed by CATU Maynooth. This union notes that following from developments in our affiliate union, Living Rent, in which a paid staff organizer was shown to have engaged in behavior actively harmful to marginalized members of that union, undermined union democracy at a local level, and used their union work as a base from which to campaign for a particular political party, which is noted for its same harmful policies and positions towards marginalized groups. There are clear dangers and risks inherent in not having direct democratic control over the staffing of the union. From what can be gathered from various online written reports from Living Rent members, the internal union processes for dealing with this glaring issue proved wildly inadequate and indeed disempowering to marginalized members affected. This union believes, as a union that bases itself on member-owned and controlled, power over union staff should be greatly redistributed to our rank and file level. We do not accept corporate, top-down managerial solutions to potential staffing issues that may arise. Rather, this union believes that our fellow members best understand their needs and the requirements from their staff, both at a local and national level, and therefore are best placed to make decisions regarding both hiring and dismissal of staff, along with directing the work of our paid organizers. All processes regarding hiring and dismissal must be as transparent as possible, as must staff oversight on a national level. This union resolves that Article 6 of our union bylaws be rewritten along the following lines. The hiring process. Hiring panel should be comprised of directly elected members considered part of regions to which organizers are hired to work. National elected committee, staff, and at least one external reviewer to maintain impartiality. For example, from affiliated or sympathetic tenant union or community organizing group. along with equal numbers of local and national representation. The local area panel members and national panel members should perform 2 distinct roles on the panel as outlined below. Applications for regional organizers should be made into 2 shortlists of maximum length of 4 candidates each, one gathered by those members considered part of that region, and one gathered by a panel of the National Elected Committee, staff, and at least one external reviewer to maintain impartiality. These shortlists will then be combined and assessed via a 3-stage interview process. First, with the national panel members, and then on their ability to carry out union activity. For example, they might be shadowed doing door knocking, forming a member defense plan, etc., by the members of that local area. Combined with feedback on both sets of panel members will be compiled into a meeting between them and a final hire decided. Some elements of hiring, such as interview scoring, require a level of confidentiality. However, all feedback should be shared with the shortlisted candidates and the final decision by the panel members relayed back to local members. For national positions, for example, admin and training, the process above is followed with a locally elected hiring representative replaced by a panel of members putting themselves forward from the entire membership. Practical panels may or may not be required depending on the nature of the role. The dismissal process. National staff, like admin and training, can have a vote of no confidence passed by a majority of the members at an AGM or EGM, which shall be regarded as bringing the competence and capability of said staff into question, mandating the National Committee or Board of Directors to pursue an investigation into said staff members' performance. This may result in the National Committee commencing a disciplinary procedure. Likewise, regional staff can have a vote of no confidence passed by a majority of members in a regional meeting, open to all members of that region, which shall be regarded as bringing the competence and capability of said staff into question, mandating the National Committee or Board of Directors to pursue an investigation into said staff's performance. This may result in the National Committee commencing a disciplinary procedure. Staff contracts can be terminated in a regular complaints procedure, as in member-member disputes, where the outcome is the removal of the staff member from the union. National staff team can terminate a contract if they feel that there has been a gross negligence, corruption, or any serious concern for the ability of a staff member to carry out their job. This can be contested by members at an AGM or EGM or regional member as an analog to the above by a vote of confidence passed in said staff member. Oversight. Staff are to present their work highlights for the year briefly to all members at an annual general meeting with space for questioning by members present. A national staff team comprised of national representatives who do not have a close personal connection to the members of staff should be nominated from within the elected national committee. The members of this team should be transparent to all union members and be clearly contactable to ask questions regarding staff, raise complaints, etc. This staff team is to check on the reporting from staff around their work, their well-being, and their progress on union-wide goals set by members at an AGM and their individual targets within that. At the expiration of a contract, national staff are either vetted to stay on or dismissed via an internal review process, similar to the one above, followed by a majority vote of the panel. Failure to pass the interview process starts a hiring process unless members stipulate that they want the role phased out following the initial vote. Likewise, at the expiration of a contract for regional staff, they are either vetted to stay on or dismissed via an internal interview process similar to one above, i.e., a combined national and local panel. Followed by a majority vote of the panel, failure to pass the interview process starts a hiring process unless members in an appropriate stipulate that they want the role phased out following the initial vote. Therefore, staff contracts all conclude around the AGM for a yearly review of staff performance.
There's a statement of opposition on motion 8 as well. Ali, I can read that if you want, or if you want to take it.
Yeah, please go ahead and read the opposition.
So this is the statement of opposition to motion number 8. Following discussions at the hustings which debated this motion, it was felt by many members present that this motion should either be withdrawn or deferred to an EGM. It should be noted that if motion 8 passes, legal advice will need to be sought as to its legality if enacted. This was also stated by proponents of motion 8 at the hustings. This legal advice would likely have to be paid for by the union. The proponents of this statement of opposition believe that national/regional organisers should strengthen their links, communication and oversight with their respective local and regional branches, and that this can only be a good thing. We also believe that better mechanisms can exist to ensure that this standard currently in place. We do not believe motion 8 provides for this in its current state. The reasons for objection being, this motion, if enacted, likely does not correspond with current labour laws in Ireland and opens up the union to being brought to the WRC, Workplace Relations Commission. Under current labour laws, any worker in the employment of a business, company or organisation must be given 1 oral warning and 2 written warnings as specified in their contract of employment, which is also to be a legally defined document concurrent with labour laws in Ireland. This objection also notes that the proponents of motion 8 have not considered the implications of a majority vote of no confidence for triggering a disciplinary process and the potentially serious legal ramifications of doing so. Motion 8 states that a majority of members may recall a paid organiser, a member of staff, or national staff based on a majority vote. Nowhere in the motion is it mentioned what a majority vote entails. Is it 51% or 75% or 80%? Is a quorum vote sufficient? Is it a vote of the entire branch or just currently active members of a branch? This is not clarified in any meaningful sense. Likewise, any threshold to trigger a vote of no confidence in the first instance is also not specified. Motion 8, if passed, will not necessitate a change to the current bylaws of the union as stated in the motion, but more likely would involve reviewing either staff contracts or staff code of conduct in ways that might go against industrial relations legislation. This motion confuses the oversight of volunteer officers of the union, national reps charged with oversight of finance, communications, accountability, etc., who are elected by the membership and thus can be recalled by the same membership, with those who are paid staff and are governed by a separate code of conduct in a relationship and contract of employment with their employer. These are two distinct legal areas of difference, which motion 8 has amalgamated. As a union that collectively works to improve people's lives, it would also be remiss of us to seek to erode the rights of workers for whom the union is their workplace. If motion 8 is passed and enacted, it will result in one of 2 possible outcomes. Number 1, it is passed, enacted and enforced. Following a majority vote and a grievance procedure, a staff member is dismissed. This process has not taken into account current labour laws governing employment and dismissal, and the union is liable for legal damages based on unfair dismissal. Number 2, the motion is passed but finally deemed unenforceable due to the aforementioned issues. Neither of these outcomes is satisfactory or desirable, therefore motion 8 should be voted down or its current state amended and brought forward to an EGM, signed by Fionn Horgan in CATU Cork and Michelle Byrne in CATU Waterford.
Okay, so this is motion 9, the campaigns group restructuring, which is submitted by the outgoing national committee. The union notes that the previous year's AGM resulted in 5 campaigns motions passed by the general membership, giving a large mandate to the union. This union also notes that there was a decision to set up an informal campaigns group structure open to all members to carry out these mandates. Due to issues of capacity, COVID-19 and the structure of the campaigns group and previous motions, while work began on all 5 of these campaigns, ultimately the union failed to adequately tackle them all. This union believes that a restructuring of national campaigns is necessary to enable national campaigns to be as effective as possible. This union resolves to remove the national campaign from Article 3.28. The membership committee will generally consult with branches and groups and sign off national campaign or activity decisions within national strategy, though it may sometimes need to make quick decisions without consultation responding to events. Remove Article 3.29. The membership committee shall act as a decision-making forum on matters including priority national campaigns, accountable on the local level for group, branch, and caucus representatives. The following should guide campaigns going forward. Voting for national campaigns happens at an AGM, with the 2 top campaigns being decided for the year. Any motion for an ongoing or proposed campaign has to be put forward structured as a rough plan, i.e., 3 steps within a time frame and an achievable goal within 6 months or a year. Local groups proposing a national campaign must create a campaign work document which outlines how the campaign is to be tied with participating local groups and participating non-branch members, and outlining the goals and vision of the campaign. A coordinating group for each campaign must be established, populated by members who voted on the campaign, which should have elected 2 campaign chairs to schedule and run meetings, with extra coordinators welcome. Additional roles, for example, communications officer, membership engagement officer, outreach officer, etc., can be added to the committee depending on need, decided by a majority vote of the coordination group members. If a member votes for a national campaign, they are expected to join the coordination group to bring that campaign about. This is motion 10, a national campaign calling for the universal right of housing for all, submitted by Crumlin Dribna. The union notes that the lack of security of tenure in their Irish housing market and the lack of good quality public housing. The union believes in the universal right of housing for all. The aim of the campaign is twofold. 1, to improve the conditions within the public current housing units. 2, to demand more public, good quality housing on the island of Ireland. This union resolves for the continuation of the Universal Public Housing Campaign with the following structure. Step 1, representation and organizing, 3 months. At present, the majority of our members rent from the private sector. A goal for the union would be aiming to increase its membership of public housing tenants by at least 10%. Ensuring public housing tenants are represented in the union is vital if we're advocating for better conditions within public housing units. Step 2, issues and demands, 2 to 6 months. Members must work with the public housing tenants to list and document a series of issues with their housing. Organizers must facilitate community meetings and surveys to find out what are the urgent and key issues needed to be addressed. Aside from the local campaigns put forward by the branches, it's also important to use this as an opportunity to define what universal public housing means to our members, to ensure that we define what security of tenure is to the tenant and the community. This would mean taking back the narrative from developers of build-to-rent units, social housing leasing, and the creation of estates without community resources, such as creches, schools, healthcare facilities, public transport access. This can be achieved with the aid of perspectives given to us by our members who reside in public housing. Step 3, campaigns, 5 to 12 months. Door knocking and meetings must be sustained through the campaign to maintain the mobilization of tenants in public housing units. Morale and connection are crucial to continuing and building lasting bonds between members. Branches must hold social events, no matter how modest, in the local area, with the aim of organizing 2 events within the time of the campaign. These events must be family inclusive. The use of pubs must be avoided as a host location when possible. Each of the branches will act upon their series of demands by direct action aimed towards local authorities. Direct actions would be at the discretion of the tenants and members of the local branches. These campaigns should be used as an opportunity to increase branch solidarity and cross-collaboration. Branches are encouraged to form with other local branches and carry out each of these steps together. This could be a benefit to small branches to help gain experience, while larger branches benefit from increased mobilization. The end of the campaign must be decided upon within the branch AGM. Motion 11, a national campaign to implement an immediate ban on all rent increases in private rented accommodation and council rented homes and tying rent to income by Inchicore and Kilmainham. For a union to adopt a motion which A, deepens our position on rent by adopting a firmer policy on tying rent to income, and B, is supported by a campaign rooted in local branches with the following demands. To implement an immediate ban on all rent increases in private rented accommodation and council rented homes allowed under the RPZ legislation outside of it, and tie rent to income as per our policy. Rationale. Extortionate rents have displaced huge numbers of people from our communities and are regularly pushing people into poverty. Despite being a well-documented crisis with plenty of media attention, there has been no downward trends in rent, and the problem continues to push and isolate our communities to the brink. Some tactics in this campaign are based on previous campaigning work. This rolls it out to a national level with a view to expanding membership capacity, testing our strength as a union, and with an ultimate aim of making our communities livable places that are no longer at the mercy of the private market. This campaign also potentially builds on and expands anti-eviction campaign, as well as complementing public housing campaign, and builds on links already formed in communities with high rates of displacement. The suggested timeline: 3 months. Official stance adopted by union on tying rents to income. Brief policy paper, not too academic, just something with detail that we can refer back to and stand over. Some background policy work done by the branch to make sure policy is good and relevant. 4 months, national action. Postcard writing day inviting every member to write to previous homes rented by members, focused on rent increases, legal or illegal. As an example of CATU Fairview, when I lived here, my rent was blank. Map and evaluate participation of this and outcomes. 6 months, national door knocking days with coordinated asks. 1, mass community petition calling on local TDs to sign up and implement our demands based on policy rolled out nationwide at local branch level. Ask people to sign the community petition. This also functions as a structure test, gauging potential for escalation. This should not replace usual tasks of people joining the union, but build on our door knocking routines already in place and build membership and capacity. 2, ask if people would escalate to a pay your rent late action as a show of strength if demands are not met. Map and evaluate participation of this and outcomes. 3, ask other orgs, NGOs, and community alliances to sign up to demands so we are less isolated. Demands become standard response to crisis in place of more neoliberal solutions, such as government subsidizing rents, HAP, etc. 9 months, local marches on local TD's offices throughout the country run by local branches to deliver demands. 12 months, coordinated national action of rent strike or paying your rent late. National demo coinciding with rent day with buses organized around the country to key points. Stormont and Dahl. Fun messaging with emphasis on solidarity and community. For example, instead of paying my rent today, or I blank, or give up your rent for Lent. Focus on testing strength of union and flexing our strength. Review and build for future escalations if demands not met. This is motion 12, a national campaign to prioritize action on dereliction, proposed by Liberty's Rialto. The union notes the corrosive problem of dereliction. This has serious knock-on effects and is a symptom of the political and economic forces behind the housing crisis. This union believes attention must be drawn to this issue and we must agitate for change. This union resolves for direct action on dereliction and legislation to address the problem. Our timeline is this: 1 month, design a poster or image and poster one small area, for example, the area around the Guinness Storehouse, to highlight dereliction and draw attention to it. Establish a real available media presence via blog posts, social media, radio appearances to draw attention to our work in this area and to highlight a narrative behind specific derelict buildings. 3 months, organize a protest outside a high-profile derelict building to educate people on specifics and draw attention to what's going on. Establish a working relationship with other relevant groups. 6 months, dereliction walking tour of a specific area. 9 months, national deliberate dereliction action involving a number of derelict buildings tours in a variety of locations. Attract new members from older demographics and small business owners whose operations are badly affected by dereliction in their areas. And 12 months, successfully bring a targeted derelict building back into use by pressuring the owner. Motion 13, a national campaign on housing for need, opposing co-living, hotels, and luxury apartments, proposed by Phibsborough Glasnevin. This union notes that high and rising rents and house prices are locking out the majority from stable, secure, and affordable homes. Co-living, hotels, and luxury apartments are 3 of the worst offenders, accelerating these rent and house price rises. All 3 are focused on developing as high a density as possible, driving up land prices, with the highest profits possible, driving up rents and house prices. These are wedge issues which can be used to push back against profit-driven housing and development more generally. This union believes that we should begin an island-wide campaign opposing new co-living, hotel, and luxury apartment developments. This campaign should combine local campaigning, targeting specific sites and areas, and national campaigning, raising the profile of the sites connecting areas together across the island. The goal of the campaign should be to A, raise public awareness and opposition to these developments, B, create clear alternatives for the sites focused on public housing, affordable rents, and community amenities, and C, use direct action to block said developments. The union resolves these campaign steps. 0 to 3 months. Local identity sites launch local petitions. On the national level, launch local online campaign on the issue. 3 to 6 months, local. Stalls and door-to-door with petitions around the site. Local meetings or street meetings depending on interest. National, share and amplify local campaigns work. 6 to 9 months, local. Local days of protest once or monthly. Send letters to developers of sites outlining opposition, community alternatives, and offer to negotiate. National, bring together local campaigns to meet in order to share resources and strategize. Organizing meetings with potential ally organizations who would sign up to campaign. Over 9 to 12 months, local. When building begins, have a direct action escalation plan. Move to weekly protest, then to daily picket line, to full blockage depending on capacity and momentum. National, amplify in social media, in press, and through mass volunteer forms, which can be used to pull larger numbers of people to action points. Note, if there's not the resources or the campaign is not prioritized for an all-island national campaign, then the union could still provide a template plan, which could then be used by local groups and branches as issues kick off. Sorry, there's a note in the group chat. Did you have something to add, to interject? No.
And Nisha, maybe do you just want to clarify the proportions for voting on each motion? It can be done at the end, like it's fine as well.
Yeah, I'll mention it now and then at the end as well. So just motions. Sorry, the motions 1, 17, and there's a third one. Let me just double check it. So sorry, motions 1, 3, and 17. Because they require constitutional change, that means that 75% of the people who vote would need to vote in favour for them to be implemented. The other ones is majority vote. So just to point that out.
Cool, thanks a million.
Cool.
Ali, do you want me to take over from 14 then?
Yeah, could you please take over community issues?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks a lot. So this is motion number 14, developing CATU's use of foreign languages and to build membership base and engagement among tenants who are non-native speakers, non-native English speakers. This is from Crumlin and Drimnagh. So the union notes that particularly in urban areas, English is often not the first language of many people who are most vulnerable to the housing crisis. Additionally, a language barrier could also prevent some potential members from joining and getting involved in the union. The union believes that we should take positive steps to increase and encourage the use of other languages in union communication, and that we should look into opportunities to develop the membership among non-native English speakers. The union resolves spend 2 to 3 months establishing which languages are most commonly spoken by tenants, and for the types of issues that commonly affect renters who are non-native English speakers. This could include putting a survey out to the existing membership base to give feedback on issues that they may have encountered and developing a potential pool of translators. After 3 to 5 months, we could commit to translating some of the main CATU documents into different languages identified from the research. Additionally, we could set up some language exchange events to build knowledge across the membership. Further research at this stage could also identify institutions that are complicit in the exploitation of tenants whose first language is not English, potentially universities or unscrupulous employers. After 6 to 12 months, we could hold a national campaign about the exploitation of international tenants, issuing a social media campaign highlighting the specific issues that non-native English speakers face. That's motion 14. Motion 15, language inclusivity and content translation from Mountjoy Dorset. Union notes, English is not the first language for many tenants across Ireland. Those who are not fluent in English are more vulnerable to exploitation from landlords and find it harder to access housing advice and support. Members who have low levels of English literacy require greater support in member defence cases, for example, in reading and replying to legal documents. CATU has the basic recruitment leaflet and About CATU webpage in English, Irish, Portuguese and Spanish, while other information is only available in English. We encounter people with many other first languages during recruitment and campaigning, and some are not able to converse in English. This language barrier limits our ability to raise awareness of CATU, recruit new members, and for new members to participate fully. The Union believes we need to make an effort to engage with migrant communities in their language because predatory landlords take advantage of their marginalisation and lack of knowledge about tenants' rights. Also, that using clear language and recognising the extra support needed for those with low English literacy will help include a greater diversity of people generally. The Union resolves in the first 3 months, ask branches to find out and report what language translations are most needed in their area, to discuss with the Latin American Working Group and Anti-Racist Working Group, to organise and run trainings in language inclusive communication, to research and produce an information sheet for branches on technological aids such as translation apps and software to convert text to speech and vice versa, to put together a list of members who are happy to be contacted for oral translation. The purpose of the list is to help branches to start engaging with people using that language with the intention that this will lead to finding local translators. In months 4 to 6, pay translators to translate the basic recruitment leaflet and public national web pages into a further 3 languages that branches need, print and distribute these leaflets, pay translator to translate most of the member resource documents into 3 languages, trial some recruitment targeting a group speaking one of those languages and experiencing exclusion. From this trial, improve training resources, compile resources, documents for branches to improve multilingual inclusion. In months 7 to 9, produce the basic leaflet in more languages, encourage more branches to target recruitment at specific groups excluded by language, and offer trainings to support this, to organise some interbranch multilingual cultural exchange social events. In months 10 to 12, to launch national campaign highlighting exploitation of international tenants. Demands could include A, better services in the RTB for those with low English literacy, B, housing to be culturally suitable, and C, for letting agents to translate documents, but exact demands would depend on what we learned. So that is motion number 15. Motion number 16, working towards a meaningful All-Ireland Union. This is from North Belfast. This union notes the specific political and historical context of housing on the island of Ireland, i.e. that there are 2 jurisdictions in Ireland, both of which oppress and exploit tenants using different laws and societal forces. The difficulties faced specifically by members in Northern Ireland, namely the state of housing in the north, the housing executive, housing associations, the private rental sector, etc. Unique circumstances found in segregated communities and a deeply divided society, peace lines, paramilitary control of communities, and political or cultural displays in housing environments. But also those of regions in the Republic of Ireland, namely housing in the south, council and local authority housing, the residential tenancies board, and the private rental sector, etc. That the centralisation of national decision-making to Dublin lends itself to an environment where members outside the city region may feel othered. The failings of CATU nationally to address partitionism. This union believes that branches and members in the north are full and equal participants in building a Homes for All union, including relevant guidance and legislation from the Northern Ireland Executive and relevant arm's length bodies is a key responsibility of an All-Ireland Union. The Union as a whole has a duty to understand the context of organisers and communities in the north and the unique issues that they face. This Union resolves to introduce into trainings information directly relevant to members in the north, to introduce cross-regional workshops to allow members to better understand issues facing tenants in different regional contexts, to consult with branches inside the jurisdiction of Northern Ireland on current and future campaigns to ensure they're all island in character and content, to train national officers to understand the state of housing in the north, the housing executive, housing associations, the private rented sector, etc. To implement trainings for officers and members covering the unique circumstances found in segregated communities and a deeply divided society, specifically peace lines, paramilitary control of communities, and political cultural displays and housing environments. Acknowledge the existence of members in different regional contexts and work to ensure full participation, adequate provision of resources and support, and to acknowledge the unique circumstances facing members who organise in Northern Ireland. Motion 16. To motion 17, implementing Irish language conventions within the body of the Union. from North Belfast as well. My Irish isn't what it should be, so I'm gonna try. Sorry. This union notes the organs of CATU currently lack the inclusion of the Irish language, the language native to the island we reside on. While some translations have been included on the CATU website, most of our structural names, National Committee, etc., and literature are in English. But as an organisation fighting for homes for all, the history of land and housing Ireland has gone hand in hand with the decimation of the Irish language. While this motion mainly focuses on Irish, as a Homes for All union, CATU has speakers of multiple different languages. The irony of submitting a motion like this in English. This union believes that the Irish language should have a central role in all aspects of the union. The struggle for housing is more than just a struggle for dwellings. It's about creating a vibrant movement where everyone has a place they can call home, and we can reclaim the land and its history from the owning classes. Striving for a flourishing Irish language element to our union is a radical act of reclamation and community building across all groups in Ireland. As our union grows, Irish is vital in its implementation and as is any languages with high density in our membership. This union resolves to introduce Irish language conventions for the structures and functionaries of the union, Marhampla, Ardesh, Cumann, Egri Ultach, etc. For example, AGM, branch, Ulster organiser, etc. Work with Gaelgori in the union to broaden Irish language provision and uptake for members. Work towards the full implementation of services and union functions in Irish for those who want to access the union in our shared language, as and when members with Irish are numerous enough to provide this. If the union has a high density of speakers of any given language, CATU should attempt to translate appropriate materials and content into respective languages. We're on to the last motion now for the year, which is motion number 18 from Phibsworth Glasnevin, Community Mental Health Support. This union notes many of our members, by virtue of their participation in the precarious housing system, as well as the stresses that can often come from organising, are in situations where they could benefit from mental health services. We also note that these services remain underfunded, have extremely long wait times, and are failing to meet people's needs. This union believes that all communities should have local mental health services, that this requires a massive increase in funding, provision of local and quality care with input from those using the services as to what kind of care is needed. That burnout is a massive issue within organising work that not only depletes our capacity, but also runs the risk of alienating members of our community. That this type of burnout is often viewed through a heavily individualistic lens, which places the burden of fighting for resources on the individual, something we as a community union should seek to collectivise. This union resolves to begin the work of preparing for a potential campaign around mental health services, as well as determining what structures CATU could put in place in the meantime to ameliorate some of these issues. Members interested in these issues should work within the existing structures of the research and training and education working groups to determine what kind of supports are needed by our communities, what kind of pressure, including but not limited to direct action and protest, would be effective in producing legislative change, what the best methods and practices are for engaging in community care and mutual aid within the union, and dependent on research and capacity, there is scope for this work to be put to use in local work in terms of demanding local services and or broader national campaigns. And that's it.
That's great. Yeah, so I think we're probably going to go to a break now for a little less than half an hour. So oh, sorry, Aaron has your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that, I don't know if I said already, but at least as a reminder, that motions 1 on rural organising, motion 3 on caucuses, bringing motions, and I believe motion 17 on the Irish language are all constitutional changes to the union, not just bylaw changes. So they need a 75% in favour to pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who haven't gotten a chance to vote yet, please get your votes in. You have 28 minutes to do so. So it should only take 10 minutes, especially since we've gone all through all of them together now. So yeah, we're probably just going to log off now for like 25 minutes or so, and we'll see you all at 3:30. Hello, everyone. So voting has now officially closed. It's done and dusted for 2022. So Nisha is gonna just go into the voting software and just have a look at by how much all the motions passed, and then they're gonna announce it. So we're actually thinking of maybe switching the last two items on the agenda, which was 15 minutes going through the motions and then 15 minutes just chatting to income and national reps about like what you want to see over the next year. So if you are happy enough to switch those around, I guess we can do that first. Before we go into it, I also just wanted to say to everyone that remember that there's also a panel that will be hosting from 7 to 8:30, and it's just like a post AGM discussion with we have people from Massey coming, people from the Regina Coeli occupation, hostel occupation. We also have someone from the MICA Action Group, and I think there's also someone coming from the Clare Leader Forum. So yeah, we'll just be chatting about like housing in Ireland and stuff, so that should be interesting. And then also just a word for the income and national reps to please fill out any forms or anything that were sent out for the handover that will be taking place next month, when we'll be officially handing stuff over to you. Yeah, so the only I guess we can all just chat together about like what you're hoping to see over the next year. So like Seamus and Tom, if you want to come in and have a quick say, we can just start bouncing ideas off each other.
Yeah, sure. I'll hop in there if that's cool. Yeah. I suppose from a kind of a branch level, we've been running a dereliction campaign in Rathmines Ranelagh. So I'd like that to continue, and we've been mapping derelict buildings in the area. And I think from what I've heard today, it'd be great to share different experiences that other branches have had, and have kind of like cross branch participation and communication. And it seems like engaging with the national committee is a way to facilitate those things. Definitely, yeah, and definitely with it would be great to get large mobilizations and in terms of actions and demonstrations, and that would be something that I'd absolutely love to see. And definitely from today, from just listening to the different people's, like the staff members' reflections on the year, there really is so much going on, and so much interesting and useful and helpful stuff to draw on. So I suppose in terms of my own role as national committee member for Rathmines Ranelagh, I'll be definitely bringing all that information to my branch and encouraging them to get involved, and that will build solidarity, and also moving things away from the centres where there has traditionally been decent CATU support, and branching out to all areas across Ireland, whether they're people who are incorporated or unincorporated. So yeah, that's my kind of hopes for the next year.
Yeah, cool. Seamus or Haroon, do you want to come in, say a quick word?
Okay, I'll go, I suppose. Hey, as I said earlier, Liberties Rialto, incoming rep. And yeah, what Tom said, pretty much. So especially speaking of their election as seen in their branch, and as our branch has flagged through motion for this AGM, it's such an issue to discuss across the country, and not just discuss, but actually act upon it. Sure. And as a vision for the future, and for the next term, I would say that we have seen, at least through the through the motions that were put to this AGM, the interest of branches for an insight into how the union actually works, an effort to activate the union membership, and an effort to fundamentally change things in the world surrounding us. So there's a lot to be done, both in terms of the internal workings and in acting out there. And I am very much looking forward to it.
Cool. If any other reps want to jump in, sorry, anyone who's on the 2022 to 2023 committee, so like even like Ali, like Ethan, Tomas, Aaron, just jump right in. I'm really excited for the languages motion if that comes through. Like I'm already thinking of loads of ways that we can like actually implement that, and just having different ways of having more like inclusive language in the union, and like possibly offering like language classes for Irish or like other languages. I think that would be unreal, and I'm really excited for that. Does anyone else want to jump in?
Hi, I'll just jump in and give a brief introduction again on what the role is going for the next year. So I'm Ethan and I'm relatively new to CATU. I joined in November last year in the Blanchardstown Dublin 15 group. And I'm also elected as national rep for this coming year, representing the LGBTQ plus caucus. So in terms of my local branch, since November, I've participated in door knocking to recruit new members in the Dublin 15 area, trying to grow the groups, turning up in person to support members, getting deposits back from scam landlords and other similar issues in which we can kind of show up for now. And obviously that was restricted during COVID lockdowns, but it's something which I hope to be involved in much more. And just generally working with Aaron to grow support in the area as it's a new group. In terms of being elected as new national rep, I hope to represent the needs and any issues arising from LGBTQ plus caucus and working on our overall structure. I'm looking forward to my new role this coming year and to listening, training and learning. I'm hoping to join the communications team. I have a background in visual communication, so hopefully that could be useful. Addressing any issues that arise for members, keeping members informed, making sure voices are heard, and I suppose most importantly, developing a fair and safe space for solidarity and discussion, and working on our strategy for the future. Yeah, so thanks for listening, and I look forward to this year.
Cool.
Then I look forward to meeting you. I guess I'll just jump in. Hi everyone, I'm Ali. I think you've heard enough of my voice for today, so I'll keep it short. I'm the incoming rep for Mountjoy Dorset, and at our branch, just over the last while, I've seen a lot of member defense cases, and just the way that the community has banded together to support everyone in our area and pulling across, the other North Side branches, and just the response whenever there's an eviction in our area has just been really inspiring. So I'm just hoping to represent everyone who's part of this community and their local interests on this committee, and hopefully do them justice, because they're really good at being there for each other. So yeah, I'd like to do that by seeing some more strategic organizing around the country, and helping to bring that to other communities that maybe, like, I want other communities to be able to experience that as well, and I want to be part of helping with that. And I'm also really excited about the motions, hopefully they pass, about opposition of dereliction and opposition of co-housing, which is an issue that's really relevant to this area. So yeah, I'd love to see what the incoming year brings in terms of that.
I can go now that my baby stopped crying, which was a feat in itself. So I think a lot depends on what motions are passed, because I was just thinking, as the incoming national, our really role is that we represent our areas and that we represent the union as a whole through the motions, and the motions are, to be honest, pretty brilliant. I'd say 99, I think pretty much all of them are brilliant, and they set an organising direction for the whole union. And I think just highlights out of it maybe from what I think, and like they strengthened some of the core things about the union, the member defence, the recruitment, the committee stuff. They kind of use our resources better, I think, and they look to use our resources better and more evenly. I think this year looks like we'll actually, to me, be the first time being all Ireland union. Cork and Belfast have really pushed hard, I think, with their motions to get the focus out of Dublin, and I think that's probably one of the most exciting things about the motions. I think the campaigns are really good if we can connect local and national together, or local and all Ireland together. So if there's a rent problem in a local area, and that's been fought as a member defence, and it becomes also part of a national campaign, I think that's where the dynamic will be amazing, and you see everything linking up, and you wouldn't feel like there's just this abstract national thing and then local stuff. I think it's going to be an exciting challenge for the incoming national committee and the staff, and us getting input from all the groups and caucuses and everything. But I think it's going to be brilliant, and and the growth is fucking class, and the money. It's good to see we've got resources, and good to see we've got loads of members, and now it's time to build this union out.
Does anyone else want to jump in before we go to the exciting part of which motions have passed?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in there. Like, I don't have too much to say really, but I suppose my hope for the union for the next year is that, you know, we continue with focusing on the basics of ingraining CATU within communities as a reliable force for community defence. And I mean, at the end of the day, CATU is still a very young union. There's a lot of work still to be done on, you know, finessing the structures within our union, making sure that they're operating as well as they should be, as you know, forces for internal democracy. And then, at least in my capacity as a national rep for Cork, I'd hope to improve the visibility and transparency of national on a branch level, at least, because I feel like in organizations like this, there is always the tendency that national or the national committee can seem kind of separate to the broader organization, while at the end of the day, it is simply an organ of the wider organization. So that's everything.
Any last words?
Well, sorry, I'll just say hello quickly. I'm Aaron from the Leary branch. I've been a recruitment officer there for about a year. And yeah, like we've become a lot more active in the last even like 3 months. I feel we've like several member defence cases on the go, I think due to the end of the eviction moratorium. But it's great, like, and I think we're growing like sort of in tandem with the uptick in member defence, seeing like a lot of like active new members, and like the sort of core of the union, the active core, is really growing, which is great to see. So yeah, just hope it continues, you know, continue to grow and win cases, you know.
Cool, good stuff. Yeah, so I think now we'll pass it over to Nisha, who will go through the motions. Very exciting. Nisha, are you around?
Yeah, good to go. I'll just get this page ready. Wait 2 seconds.
So excited for hiring new staff as well for during the next year. If the motion passes, or even like, it's high time that Ulster get their own organizer.
So everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So motion number 1, establishment of regional networks for unincorporated members from Cork, and the result is 347 for and 11 against. Is a resounding pass. Motion number 2 from Dunleary, internal structures and union democracy, 289 for and 21 against. Just to say, I have the percentages. There's 3 that I don't have percentages for yet, so I might read them out at the end if that's okay. Motion number 3 from Fairview Marina Clontarf is a no. It's 107 in favour and 200 against.
Oh.
Motion number 4. Go back, actually, sorry. Motion number 4, waiving membership dues for asylum seekers and members in direct provision from Rathmines Ranelagh. 295 for and 36 against. Number 5, branch splits and local organising from South and East Belfast. 238 for and 37 against. Number 6, restructuring paid organising to focus on regional organising, hiring an Ulster organiser as a priority. 257 in favour and 20 against. Number 7, improving democratic oversight of paid staff from Liberties Rialto. 252 in favour and 30 against. Number 8, democratisation and increased accountability of staffing within CATU from Maynooth is a no. It's 132 for and 150 against. That's tight. Number 9, campaigns group restructuring from the outgoing national committee. That is 244 in favour and 20 against. Number 10, a national campaign calling for a universal right of housing for all from Crumlin and Drimnagh is 258 in favour and 26 against. Number 11, national campaign to implement an immediate ban on all rent increases in all private rented accommodation and council rented homes and tying rent to income from Inchicore and Mainham. That is 245 in favour and 32 against.
Nisha, there's just a question there from Seamus. Could you
Yeah.
slow down a little bit reading them out?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no problem. So, motion number 12 is a national campaign to prioritise action on dereliction. That's from Liberties Rialto. And it has 204 in favour and 68 against. Number 13, national campaign on housing for need, proposing co-living hotels and luxury apartments from Phibsburg Glasnevin. That has 249 in favour and 27 against. Number 14, developing CATU's use of foreign languages and to build membership base and engagement among tenants who are non-native English speakers from Crumlin and Drimnagh. That has 270 in favour and 18 against. Motion number 15, language inclusivity and content translation from Mountjoy Dorset. That one has 274 in favour and 9 against. Number 16, working towards a meaningful All-Ireland Union from CATU North Belfast. That one has 266 yes, favour, and 14 against. Motion number 17, implementing Irish language conventions within the body of the Union from North Belfast. That one has 252 in favour and 29 against. And the last one, community mental health from CATU Phibsburg Glasnevin. That one has 198 in favour and 76 against. I'm just working out the last few. I have the percentages for all of them except the last three, so I'm going to come back in about 2 minutes with the last few, just for people to know the percentages.
Cool. Yeah, I guess now we also have to like work out. Sorry, did the one on the campaigns pass or no?
The motion 9, from the outgoing national.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we also have to then, in our own time, figure out what the top two campaigns were and all that.
I think that'd be good to do now if we have the percentages there. Do we have the campaigns percentages, Nisha?
Yeah, just 2 minutes, Aaron. I'll have them. Just
yeah. Cool, sounds good. And then there's a question there about overall turnout. And I don't know if we can see everyone that voted because people might have voted in some motions and not in others. But yeah, the estimate of around 300, 400 people, I think is about right. What did we say? Yeah, it was 375 as of like 10 minutes before voting closed. So that's about what's that? 400 is a proportion of 1600. That's about a quarter, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's we total number in the end was 378, and there was 1628 ballots sent out. So 23%.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, sorry for the delay. Percentages are good to go now. So, I'll share the screen again. So, motion 1 passed 97.
Sorry, Nisha, but can we clarify, because it is not actually clear in the campaign's restructuring motion, is it the two campaigns that passed that have the highest percentage of yes votes or that have the highest total number of votes? Because it says in the campaign's restructuring motion, it just says the top two motions. But given that people might have voted on some motions and not others, it is necessary to clarify whether it's the one that has the ones that have the highest percentage of yes or the highest number of yes votes. Do you see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
First, maybe let's check if there is any contradiction between these two interpretations, because there maybe if the two interpretations give the same consistent result, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, definitely something that needs to be clarified. But I guess for the moment, let's just look at the top two that got the most votes, and then the top two who got the largest percentage of yes, and see what the difference is.
It might be relevant just because the text from the outgoing national motion about restructuring campaigns encouraged people to only vote on the thing they're interested in.
Yeah.
So if someone went through with that, they might not even have voted no on another motion. They might have just voted exclusively on the one they were interested in.
Sure. Okay. So would it make sense to go through the campaigns related motions one by one and see the amount of people? Would that be a good starting point?
I'd say yes, but yeah, let's say the percentage and the amount of people for each one.
Okay. So for motion 10 from Crumlin and Drimnagh. So 258 in favor and 26 against. For number 11, 245 in favor and 32 against. For number 12, 204 and 68. For 13, 249 and 27.
So they are actually consistent. The percentages, the highest percentages correspond to the highest number of yes votes and vice versa. So we won't have any ambiguity moving forward.
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, I'll just do a quick run through. You can see it on the screen anyway, but motion 1, 97% yes. Motion 2, 93%. Motion 3, 65% said no. Motion 4, 89%. Motion 5, 86. Motion 6, 93%. Motion 7, 89%. Motion 8, 53% no. Motion 9, 92%. And then the ones we just discussed in the campaigns grouping, 91, 88, 75, and 90. And then on the community issues ones, motion 14, 94%, motion 15, 96%, motion 16, 95, 17, 90%, and number 18, 73%.
Well, there you have it, folks. So I guess maybe like a summary can also be emailed out to members just to like have a record of it. Although there'll be minutes of the AGM, so I guess that could be sent out then. So yeah, unless anyone wants to say anything before we head off, thanks so much for everyone for attending and looking forward to the next year.
Hi, everyone.
Don't forget, we have a panel on at 7. Some really cool speakers from Regina Coeli, Hostile Occupation, from the Movement of Asylum Seekers in Ireland, from the Clare Leader Forum, which is the like disability rights group, and from the MICA Action Group, who actually had a meeting with the Taoiseach today. So they all have very interesting and exciting things to tell us. Some maybe less represented housing issues across the mainstream. And yeah, it's at 7, exact same link as this one. And it'd be good to see people there because I think the speakers are very exciting.
Cool. See you this evening, people.
Great job, everyone. Amazing work. And it's going to be a great year ahead.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Yep.